3, 2, 1.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to COTE Youth Virtual Debate Competition. I am Roxanne Brizan-Sen-Martin, the coordinator of the COTE Youth Events. The COTE Youth Events forms part of the Conference on the Economy, which is the annual landmark event of the Department of Economics. This year, due to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, our activities are being conducted virtually under the theme, Crisis is Opportunity, COVID-19, the way forward. As a department, we recognize the importance of meaningful and authentic youth engagement in moving our development agenda forward as small island developing states and in navigating through this pandemic. This event, the COTE Youth Debate Knockoff Competition, features both secondary and tertiary schools across Trinidad and Tobago. It allows for an academic experience outside of the formal classroom setting in which students are able to develop their oral and written communication and critical thinking skills while developing effective tools for research, organization, and presentation. It promotes problem solving and innovative thinking. To our debaters, we know you have worked hard and we look forward to a great program. To our viewing audience, we thank you for taking the time to support the students and this activity, and we welcome your continued participation in our activities. As we move into this afternoon's proceedings, allow me the opportunity to introduce the moderator of this year's debate competition. He is no stranger to the COTE Youth events and has served in this capacity in previous years. Mr. Ronald Francis is a St. Lucian PhD candidate in linguistics and a part-time lecturer at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. He holds a BA in Spanish and linguistics. His research interests includes cross-linguistics transfer, learner corpora, second language learning, Creole languages and music, Creole phonology, and Caribbean French lexicon Creoles. Welcome, Mr. Ronald Francis.
Thank you, Roxy. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just take the opportunity as a chair to welcome, first and foremost, all of our debaters. I see some of you coming back, and I'm very happy to see that you're continuing with the COTE Economic Debate program. And I see a few new names on the bios list this year, so I'm very excited to see that as well. Over the years, the debates have really been exciting. It's very exciting, especially to see the secondary school students so engaged in civil public discourse. So I thank you for participating, and I'm very excited to see what you have in store for us today. In terms of this afternoon, how we will go ahead, I will first start by introducing our judges very, very shortly, and I will ask them to turn their cameras on and perhaps just say hello so that they will come to the fore while they're being introduced. And then I will introduce the speakers for each individual debate right before the debates. All right? For the general public who's not aware of the rules, there will be three speakers. There may be two speakers, but there will be three speeches by each side. There's a proposition and there's an opposition. So there's a first proposition speaker who supports the motion, and then a first opposition speaker who opposes the motion, and then a shorter second proposition speaker, and then a shorter second opposition speaker. And then at times you have a new summary speaker at the end, or you may have either the first or second proposition and or opposition doing the summary speech at the very end of the debate. This year, of course, part of the excitement of the debate is the point of information where the opposing team gets to cut in and kind of rattle the person speaking, but we can't do it that way because we're doing it online, unfortunately, because of the current pandemic. So what we're going to do is have points of information at the end of the proposition and opposition speeches before we have the final summaries of the debate, all right? So again, that is for debaters and everybody watching who's accustomed to debating. We will have 2 minutes in which case you will address the chair, debaters, and let us know that you have a point of information for the opposing team, and then we will take your point of information. Only 2 minutes, right? Remember that your point of information is supposed to be a question. So you're not debating in the point of information, you're asking a pointed, clear question. If you get into any kind of logorrhea or diatribe and you go on and on and on, I will cut you off, okay? So that is how it goes. And the debaters, just to be clear, and again, for everybody who's listening, we are going through the rules. The first proposition speaker, the first proposal will be 8 minutes long. And then the second speaker will be 6 minutes long. And then each side will have 4 minutes to summarize. Some teams have researchers who are assisting them as they go along. I will be reading out who the researchers are at the beginning of each debate. So before we even get into the first topic, let us begin with our wonderful judges, most of whom I have seen before, who have done an excellent job. So we'll start off with Miss Candice Hughes Bengoshe, and I really hope I got that correct this time. Candice Hughes Bengoshe, who will serve as our chief judge today. So I'm not sure if our host can spotlight Candice for a moment so everybody can see Candice as I read her bio. Ms. Bengoshe has been involved in culture and the arts all of her life, right? She is a scholarship recipient from the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, and concluded her undergraduate career at Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington. She has a passion for study abroad and spent a semester in Botswana, Africa, while at PLU. She returned to Trinidad, where she has professional experience of over 10 years coordinating study abroad experiences for foreign students. She is the founder of her own company, Exquisite Tours and Management Company, which manages study abroad and volunteer opportunities for students throughout the Caribbean. She has completed her master's in cultural studies at the University of the West Indies, and is currently concluding her second master's in management studies. She is currently the postgraduate representative for the Faculty of Social Sciences and the UE Advocate for Community Engagement, ACE. Mrs. Bengoshe has been involved in debating and public speaking and is currently a member of the Malik Folk Performing Company. She has a passion for youth in her hometown of Sangre Grande, where she is the manager of the Youth Music and Literacy Program and other youth programs such as MADE, M-A-D-E, Empowering Youth for Volunteerism and Community Involvement. So let's click our round of applause buttons for our, if you have them, for our head judge, Ms. Candice Hughes Bengoshe. Our second judge today is Dr. Ricardo Lalu. And Dr. Ricardo Lalu has been an instructor with the UA's Department of Economics since 2005, teaching primarily undergraduate mathematics and statistics courses within the department. He earned the BSc in Economics and Management Studies from the UE in 2009, an MSc in Economics from the UE in 2010, and a PhD also from the UE in Economics in 2019. His research interests include financial economics, derivative markets, and hedging. So a round of applause for Dr. Ricardo Lalu. Thank you. We're very excited to have you with us. And then finally, by no means least, we have Gregory Wallace, who is a graduate of the University of the West Indies with a BSc in Mathematics and Economics and a master's degree in Management Studies. He has spent 16 years as a manager in the financial services sector, which involved strategic planning teams and teams promoting organizational change. He is very analytical and competent in quantitative skills, excellent writing skills. He has excellent writing skills and presentation skills. Mr. Wallace has worked with the UE Distance Ed program and the Department of Econ as a tutor, part-time lecturer, and instructor for over 20 years. He is currently working with the Department of Economics as a part-time lecturer for the courses Introduction to Mathematics and Introduction to Statistics. He is no stranger to the COTE Youth Debate, where he has served in the capacity of judge for several years. So we welcome Mr. Wallace again to our panel of judges. So that is who will be judging you students, right? Some of them you've seen before, right? You are in very capable, knowledgeable, experienced hands. So jumping right into our very first debate for today, we have 3 debates for you. The first one being, debate 1 being Northgate College versus SWAHA Hindu College. And the topic is, be it resolved that peace brings development and not development brings peace. So again, peace brings development, development brings peace. And proposing for us today, just to be, let me be sure that I have it here. Pulling up my debaters, all right. Proposing for us today is SWAHA Hindu College. So the proposition today will be SWAHA Hindu College. And we have 2 speakers and 1 researcher from that college. The first one is Ambika Pabaru, and we will spotlight Ambika Pabaru, host, so everybody can see her, who will be our first proposition speaker, but also the summary speaker at the end. Ambika is an upper 6th student at SWAHA Hindu College who is passionate about business and economics and hopes to use this passion to become an entrepreneur. Ambika hopes to one day work in the education sector, since she believes sharing knowledge and molding minds is critical to the successful development of a country. Ambika enjoys public and motivational speaking and uses this particularly in the area of mental health. So welcome, Ambika, and wish you good luck in the debate today. Our second proposer today from SWAHA Hindu College will be Sage Mitchell. Sage is a 17-year-old student from SWAHA Hindu College. In her free time, she enjoys writing and listening to music. She is determined to excel in her academic pursuits so as to become a certified lawyer. So this is good practice for you, Sage. We welcome Sage. And Ambika and Sage will be assisted today by Jeremiah Gill, the researcher. And Jeremiah is 17 years old, also from SWAHA Hindu College, of course, the debate team, and he is dedicated and a persistent student who prioritizes success. Jeremiah resides in Kumutu, I hope I said that correctly, I am a solution, and excels at sporting activities and enjoys assisting, leading, and motivating others. So we welcome our debaters and researcher from SWAHA Hindu College. Secondly, we have Northgate College, who will be opposing the motion in our first debate today. And we have our first opposition speaker, Zeha Lamont Harper. So Zeha is a 15-year-old 5th form student. She does ballet, modern, and tap dancing for the national dance team and is a lover of foreign languages. She also enjoys cooking gourmet dishes. Then our second opposition speaker or rebuttal speaker will be Sierra Rudding. Sierra is a 14-year-old 4th form student. She hopes one day to be an advocate for systems that lead to equal experience for citizens of our nations. And then our summary speaker will be Rejan Grant. Rejan is 16 years old. She's a 5th form student. She's interested in the performing arts and theater, but plans to be a representative for Trinidad and Tobago's affairs on the world stage. So we look forward to Rejan's world debut. So we thank you to our debaters. Again, to everybody listening, our motion, our first motion is, be it resolved that peace brings development and not development brings peace. So again, we will have our first proposition speaker who will be speaking for 8 minutes. And just to be clear, after you have been speaking for 1 minute, you will hear a bell indicating that you are 1 minute into your speech. Can we get the bell so that they are aware of what it sounds like? Everybody's aware of what it sounds like. Team, are we there? Wonderful. And then when you are 7 minutes in, that is 1 minute remaining, you will get a notice telling you that you have 1 minute remaining, which means you should wrap up wherever you are. And that notice is, it will sound like this. Can we get the notice?
1 minute remaining.
Wonderful. And then finally, at the very end of your 8 minutes for the first speaker and the end of your 6 minutes for the second speaker, you will hear the bell telling you to stop speaking, right? Okay. So if
Time's up.
time's up.
1 minute remaining.
Right. So if no further ado, we welcome our first proposition speaker, Ambika Padaru. You have 8 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman, distinguished guests, teachers, and students. Be it be resolved that peace brings development, not development brings peace. And we, the members of the SWAHA Hindu College Debate Club, are in full agreement with this statement. In order for us to do justice to this topic, we must first understand the meanings of the terms peace and development. For each and every one of us here today, these terms mean something different. The United Nations Goal number 16 states that by the year 2030, it aims to promote peace, justice, and strong institutions. That is, to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. Where there is sustainable development, the people are able to perform efficiently and there will be an equitable distribution of resources both intergenerally and extragenerally, with the operation of socio-economic activities within the confines of a finite ecosystem. As defined by SAIL 1999, economic development is the expansion of capacities that contribute to the advancement of society through the realization of individuals, firms, and communities' potential. Joanne Galton, the founder of academic discipline, peace, and conflict studies, defines peace as the capacity to transform conflicts with empathy and creativity without violence. Some of us may have simply defined peace as the absence of violence, and this definition isn't incorrect. As a matter of fact, there are two types of peace. These are negative peace and positive peace. Negative peace simply refers to the absence of physical violence. The Institute for Economies and Peace defines positive peace as attitudes, institutions, and structures that create and sustain peaceful societies. In layman's terms, peace can be defined as the absence of indirect cultural and structural violence, which terminates conflict, creating and sustaining harmonious societies. With the presence of peace in society, we are able to have good relations with society, a low level of poverty, and a decrease in the levels of corruption. Sustainable development could only be brought about when corruption is absent in society. Yes, corruption is a contributing factor to the absence of positive peace. Corruption is defined as dishonest behavior by those in power and can be broken up into unregulated or legal corruption. According to Vision of Humanities, on average, $14 trillion per year, yes, per year, is accounted for in bribery, theft, and tax evasion costs in developing countries. This study also includes Trinidad and Tobago, as we are also a developing country in the world. Is it really possible to move out of developing to developed with the presence of high levels of corruption? The answer to that question is simply no. We cannot move forward when the smaller businesses are being ignored in the sense of granting contracts. For example, larger contractors are able to bid for the contract, plus in some instances, as we say in local culture, pass a small thing, to ensure that they get the contract, unlike smaller contractors who may not necessarily have the finances to do so. How can this possibly facilitate sustainable and economic development? Corruption and embezzlement is also seen here at home, where previous Attorney General Gerald Ramdeen and Alan Ramlogan who served from 2010 to 2015, were arrested and charged because when they came into office, spending went from some 40 million to $1.4 billion. Another could be seen when we had the fake oil scandal in 2017, where Petrotrin paid A&V Drilling $100 million for oil and never received it. How can we develop in a country like this? How can we move forward? How can we grow in a world in which a World Economic Forum has reported that due to corruption, there's a 10% increase in the cost of doing business, and the IMF has reported a 5% decrease in investments? How can we possibly foster development in economies in which businesses can't survive, in economies in even which politicians are corrupt? Yes, development would only be achieved with the presence of peace. History shows us that development cannot be fostered in countries that are experiencing warfare due to high levels of poverty. Think for a moment about living in a country in which warfare is present, where bombs are basically falling from the sky and your children are being shot by stray bullets. Think about your homes being lit on fire for no reason. Think about going days and even weeks with little to no food and no steady income. Imagine where you would live and the work that you will do. Imagine the environment you will be in. How productive can you really be in that environment? In the words of world-renowned economist Adam Smith, there will be no development without productivity. It is clearly impossible for the economy to grow in an environment where peace is absent. Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory further supports this, where it states that the basic human needs and psychological needs are not met. That is, their needs for basic amenities, security, safety, love, and belonging, or simply factors which cause a person's peace. They will not be able to reach the point of self-actualization or be motivated to be at their peak level of productivity. Well, let's take the principle of Maslow's theory and apply it into society as a whole. If citizens of a country are hopeless, suffering from unemployment, experiencing a lack of security due to high crime rates, do you really think they will be able to contribute fully to the development of a country? Don't you think that if peace was present in society, sustainable development could be achieved? The fact is as simple as this. If people work together, cooperate, and understand each other, they will work together to achieve a common purpose. In the presence of good relations in society, a low level of poverty, and a significant decrease in corruption, only then can development occur. By having an economy which is fully developed but having the absence of peace, we have to ask, does this really make sense? Does it make sense to invest in the best infrastructure for production and train the workforce to efficiently perform their jobs, just to be destroyed by the presence of negative peace? Does it make sense to invest financial resources into development in the middle of a battlefield? Ask yourself, would you build a house in a place where it is guaranteed to be destroyed? I would leave this question in the hands of my worthy opponents. This is why the members of SWAHA Hindu College are in full support of this statement.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you.
She finished?
All right, thank you, Mbika, for that very spirited introduction to today's debate. Well done. And of course, with no further ado, we invite Zia to oppose the motion. From Northgate College, we have Zia Lamont Harper, who will be our first opposition speaker. Welcome, Zia.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Northgate has 2 points of information. Aren't we supposed to make you all aware after the person is finished speaking?
Right, so we'll take the points of information at the end of the main
Okay,
speakers
sure. No
before the
problem.
summaries. Yeah?
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we invite Zia to do the first opposition speech at this time. 8 minutes. Zia, you know the rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, judges, audience, and our worthy opponents. 4 years ago, an age-old question was definitively and decisively answered by a comprehensively investigated Time magazine article. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Aristotle one of the world's foremost philosophers and embryonic experts, had actually answered the question many years before when he proffered that an egg was the product of a chicken, but only recently modern science had been able to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. Mr. Chairman, when the debate presented itself with the idea of be it resolved that peace brings development and not development brings peace, we can see that it is a simple question of order that the things happens in. Asking for there to be peace before development is putting the cart before the horse. And how do we know this? By looking at the definition of two main words, development and peace. The Oxford University Press, with over 400 years of experience in the origin of root words, helps us with that. It defines peace as complete contentment or satisfaction. It is further cemented as freedom from war and violence, living and working together happily without disagreements. Development is defined as any process to bring something into existence, not only pertaining to economics. But what is it going to bring into existence? Let's look at the definition of peace. Incomplete to complete. We see a process happening here. Freedom from war or violence. The concept of freedom can only come from there being restriction. There must be a process that led to that. Now, what is that process? Development. The cart cannot come before the horse. The horse must come first. Mr. Chairman, one may place countries such as Norway, Switzerland, New Zealand, Iceland on the pedestal of peace. But alas, while major current military conflict might not be their prevailing situation at this time, one must remember the process development that is responsible for where they are today. The nations higher up on the scale of the Global Peace Index exist just the same way an iceberg does. The untrained eye might look at the present circumstances of these nations, the 10% of the iceberg you see above the water. The trained eye looks below the surface for the 90% structure, the 90% process that is responsible for holding up the tip of that iceberg. If one goes further to look at the development of icebergs, it is built or destroyed depending on that 90% below the surface. This is an excellent analogy for the development of peace. A process leads to an end result. And in the case of this motion's use of the present continuous word brings, it is a constant process taking one closer and closer to a point of complete contentment, camaraderie, and cohesion. Please remember that none of these countries got to the position where they are involved in reduced military conflict by chance. They did not just get so peaceful just like that. There was a process that led to this. Mr. Chairman, referring to the UN Peacekeeping Resource Hub 2020, I want to remind the House that peace, by its broad and encompassing definition, is not simply limited to the absence of military conflict. Rather, any attempt to attain a modicum of peace is more closely connected to the level of social conflict, impact of environmental degradation, the pattern of economic booms and busts, sensitivities on religious tolerance, political stability, and the balance of ethnic cohesion. The list can go on, Mr. Chair. While time might not permit me to do so, we can still point out the 90% process, development process, that's responsible for the 10% relative peace we see today in these nations. One must remember that New Zealand's original colonial government massacred the native Maoris in the 1800s. The 150-year process leading to a national apology was marred with the terrorist attack on a mosque in their nation, a nation plagued by Islamophobia. Other nations, such as Switzerland, boast current military waters that are fairly pristine. Stir that surface a bit, and those very waters show their murky nature. A struggle to provide for its aging and vulnerable population, and the plague of xenophobia that rages across the country are both so destabilizing that the British Guardian's article, Countering Xenophobia and Stigma, documents the central governmental seemingly unending struggle with a nation unwilling to embrace foreigners, as one would hope. And Iceland, save the best for last, Mr. Chairman, the beacon, the champion of the Global Peace Index. Some boast of Iceland's low crime rates and relatively high quality of life that exists today. However, one must remember that it is the chicken that laid this egg. Iceland began in a history of brutal and unforgiving violence, meted out by the Vikings establishing their nation. Process, Mr. Chairman, process. Only
1 minute
in
remaining.
1975, one of the last nations to do so, their gender gap was closed and women were finally granted equal rights after massive protests. Mr. Chairman, again, process. With the second highest suicide rates in the world, the country battles against today with 2 in 10 of their young persons ravaged by drug abuse. A nation seeing peace in the distance and still working out a way to get there. Process. Mr. Chair, one cannot point to the peace associated with the tree's fruit without recognizing the process that was provided by the tree's root. The development process is the vehicle that puts us on the road to peace. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Zaya. So what we will do at this point is that we will take the points of information for the first proposition and opposition speakers. So first, I will ask Northgate College, who's opposing, to direct their points of information towards Ambika. All right, we'll do that for 2 minutes, and then we will do it the other way around. So any points of information from Northgate?
Yes, we have
Ambika?
2 points of information, 2 questions. Hi, Ambika. In your definition of development, you limited it only to the economic level. Are you disregarding things like personal, political, cultural, or environmental development?
Of course not. Development is something that takes place at all levels, and we need to understand this and pay attention to this and be able to relate this to our everyday lives, our everyday society, and whatnot. Development is not only, I also spoke about sustainable development and economic development, and this is something that we need to understand and pay attention to because it's very important. And I'm not disregarding any aspect of development in any way, because each and every aspect is important in the overall development of society. And we need to understand this, that peace is the thing that really contributes to overall development. Thank you.
Question number 2, you said with prevalence of peace in society, it shall benefit, but how can you guarantee this?
Because think about it, I spoke about negative peace and positive peace. Because with negative peace now, we now have war and whatnot. With positive peace, we have basically these things that are actions, right? Like such as embezzlement. I spoke about embezzlement, my proposition and whatnot. We also have to look at, pardon, just remember the question.
You said with prevalence of peace in society, it shall benefit, but I'm asking, how can you guarantee this?
It will, because think about it. When you're building businesses, when you're trying to develop human capital, right? You all pay attention to development bringing peace. But when we look at it trying to develop human capital, if we have warfare, all human capital will be destroyed. We will now have that passing of gunfire. We now have those bombs and whatnot in which our infrastructure will be destroyed, our human capital will be destroyed. And then after, how can we have development in a situation like that? How can we have development in which every time we try to build something, it's destroyed? We need to have peace in order to have development.
All right, thank you. Remember that when you are given a point of information, whoever the speaker is, you have the option to accept or reject it, right? Moving forward. So you don't have to accept every point of information that comes to you, right? So I accept, I reject. And then I think after this round, we'll revert to doing it immediately after each speaker. It'll make it a little bit easier. Yeah. But right now, I will ask whether or not the proposition has any points of information for Zia, who was the first opposition speaker. So anybody from SWAHA?
Yes, actually we also have two. So who determines that peace is the egg and development is the chicken? Who really does this? That's what I would like to ask.
Well, in my speech, the Oxford University Press defined development as a process. A chicken comes before the egg. Therefore, the chicken starts the process to produce the egg, the end result. I'm just using it as an analogy to show that development can be the chicken and the process is what produces peace, the end result.
Okay, and my second question, what is the process that countries such as Switzerland and Iceland, you spoke about those, went through in order to be developed? What is this process?
So the process would be things like even going through a war, that is a process. They went through a war to arrive at military, to arrive at reduced military conflict. They can also have a process in social aspects. Having massive protests is what led to the women having equal rights. Things like that, I would consider the process that led to the peace in the country today.
And one more question.
No, we will not allow it. You had 2 points of information, and the time for points of information, has come, right? And we also want to be very clear about our points of information work. We're having some slightly different, we're operating slightly differently because of the Zoom environment. But in the past, I thought the debaters were very clear on what point of information is, right? So you say point of information, and the speaker, you have the option to accept or reject it immediately. I accept, I reject. When the point of information has been accepted, then you ask your question. Debaters, are we clear? Then you ask your question. If it is rejected, you do not get to ask your question, right?
Is this during or after the debate?
This is after. So we'll do it immediately after each speaker, all right? Okay. So we'll do it immediately after each speaker. You say point of information addressed to the chair, and then the speaker will accept or reject it, okay? I think that's the best way to make it smooth in this environment that we are operating in right now. I know that in the past, some of you are accustomed to just interrupting the speaker as they're going, and that's part of the excitement of the debate, but we cannot do that right now with the online structure, okay? So we'll now have the second proposition speaker proposing the motion, Sage Mitchell from SWAHA Hindu College. Who will be speaking for 6 minutes on the motion that we are debating right now, which is, be it resolved that peace brings development and not development brings peace, okay? So we invite Sage to do the second proposition.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, distinguished guests, teachers, and students. As my colleague has stated, we agree with the statement that peace brings development, and I purport to further substantiate this concept. My opponents have mentioned that you cannot have peace under conditions of development. However, it must be noted that a peaceful environment is necessary to encourage development. Places noted to have low levels of crime are significantly more likely to experience development. And this is because they portray a better business environment. Entrepreneurs are more likely to take risks in areas deemed safer. If you are an entrepreneur, would you like to invest in a violent area? Your answer is likely no, and that speaks to the concept that peace brings development. Through strategies such as industrialization by invitation, theorized by Sir Arthur Lewis for development in the Caribbean, it can be noted that there were mixed reviews, seeing that companies are less willing to enter into atmospheres which have unattractive business conditions. Factors such as higher crime rates discouraged the entrance of international investors into the Caribbean territories. Another point made by the opposition was that there was a process to development. However, in explaining this point, they admit that reduced combat is a part of the process, meaning that in order to develop, there is a need for peace. There is a notable link between the highest developed countries and the countries with the lowest crime rates, and this cements the concept that peace brings development. Following the HDI developed by the UN and the crime rate index calculated by the World Bank, frequent comparison can be made between the highest developed countries and the countries with the lowest crime rates. It can be noted that most countries appearing on one list appear on the other as well. Take, for instance, Hong Kong, which appears 5th on the highest developed list and 8th on the lowest crime rates list. Another notable country is Switzerland, which appears 2nd on the highest developed list and 5th on the lowest crime rates list. Coincidence? I think not. Countries experiencing civil wars require citizens to flee. In these circumstances, people cannot lead stable lives, they cannot farm or earn money. For instance, civil war in South Sudan has made the 3rd most fled country worldwide, with approximately 2.2 million refugees. 2.2 million refugees. As a result, famine was declared in 2017. People faced a scarcity of food as they could not settle and grow crops to eat and sell. Does that sound like development to you? Had conditions been different, people would settle, build, grow crops, and develop the lands. Exploring a more regional scale, we can look at our neighboring country of Venezuela. Venezuela has a fleeing population. This fleeing population is as a result of political, economic, and humanitarian unrest within the nation. Similarly to South Sudan, they are facing food shortages. Both countries are in this dire situation due to the lack of production, due to the migration of citizens, as well as the poor leadership and corruption of those in power. As a result, the country's development is halted. Due to social unrest in Venezuela, we saw an influx of Venezuelan migrants into Trinidad and Tobago. The underlying question is, what are they fleeing from and where are they fleeing to? According to the deceased Pedro Nicon, a Venezuelan champion of peace, only a political agreement between the Maduro regime and the oppositional National Assembly will facilitate a solution to Venezuela's crisis and lay the groundwork for the country and its institutions to recover. As we would say, peace needs to occur for development to be achieved. Personalizing even further, we can examine areas in Trinidad and Tobago. It can be noted that a large portion of undeveloped areas are those experiencing less peace with higher levels of poverty. Without stigmatizing specific regions and citizens of the country, the facts show that the Sangre Grande region has the highest level of poverty in Trinidad. They are not experiencing high growth and prosperity. In an article written by the Honorable Roger Boynes, MP for the Togo-Manzanilla district from 2002 to 2007, he stated that the district is the least developed part of Trinidad and Tobago. In development terms, the region has lagged behind the rest of the country. In terms of the prevalence of poverty, Sangre Grande has the most poor persons per 100 in the national population, with a striking 39.1%. Yes, 39.1% of the Sangre Grande population is deemed to be living under the poverty line. According to Richard C. Blum, chairman and president of Blum Capital Partners, it is true that poor
1 minute remaining.
into violence. Yet, if poverty leads to insecurity, it is also true that the destabilizing effects of conflict and demographic and environmental challenges make it harder for leaders, institutions, and outsiders to promote human development. How is it that development can occur in a place in which poverty is prevalent? Thus, my colleagues and I are in full support of the statement that there must be peace in order for there to be development. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any points of information for our second proposition speaker? Any points of information?
Yes. Yes. Point of information.
Do you accept, Sage?
I accept.
Okay, question, Zia.
I noticed you highlighted Switzerland as a peaceful nation, but you ignored their violent and brutal past that led to where they are today. You have also ignored their main problems, such as xenophobia and stigma. Are you disregarding the social aspect of peace and development?
I am not disregarding the social aspect of peace and development. I am saying, who is to be certain? Have you noted the which actually came first between the peace and the development in Switzerland?
Okay, and I have another point of information.
Do you accept it, Sage?
I accept.
Okay. You stated that countries that are at peace now are significantly more likely to experience more development. However, you did not provide any proof to back up this statement. I would like to know, where did you get this?
I believe that that statement is more of a common knowledge statement. In an entrepreneurial state of mind, we would be more encouraged to enter into an atmosphere that you think you would be successful in, where you're not worried about crime affecting your business.
Okay, thank you very much to Sage for a very wonderful second proposition speech. And then to end the main portion of the debate, before we get to summary, we have the rebuttal, which is the second opposition. And then we're inviting Sierra Ruddin from Northgate College to give us a 6-minute rebuttal speech. Take it away, Sierra.
Good afternoon, everyone. All protocols observed. As my eloquent teammate previously mentioned, development is a process, Mr. Chair. Now, like most processes, development brings a final result, or brings you one step closer to your desired result. What is fundamentally wrong with the stance my worthy opponents took is that they claim that the result will ensue a process without recognizing the process that led to that result in the first place. Now, my opponent's speeches were riddled with misconceptions and fallacies. A fallacy is a flaw in reasoning which exposes a weakness in the structural integrity of an argument. And in my opponent's speeches, there was an abundance. In my opponent's first speaker's speech, she committed a slippery slope fallacy, where she says that something will lead to another thing without proving any actual proof, without proving any evidence that one will lead to the other. She did this when she said, when there's peace, that economic development will automatically follow. Then she also cherry picked when she only defined development as sustainable development and economic development. Then she also committed an appeal to belief. She stated that peace will lead to the removal of corruption, but she provided no real connection. She provided no proof to back up this statement. She also stated, we cannot move forward with the removal of corruption. Mr. Chair, we may not be able to move forward in the exact way we hoped, or the most conventional way, but we can still move forward. We can still develop. She committed another appeal to belief when she stated, if people work together for a common purpose can be achieved. This is not always the case. Many things have been achieved when people have gone their own way. She also committed hasty generalization when she used an example of Trinidad and Tobago's corruption issues, but failed to indicate that this is one nation's experience, and did not include the reasons for the corruption, reasons that may not even exist in other countries. Also, when she was responding to my teammates' point of information, She replied to each thing with saying, well, I think. Well, I think. That is an appeal to belief. She provided no evidence to back up her responses. She just constantly said, well, I think that this will happen. You cannot use that as valid information in this debate. Also, the second speaker, my worthy opponent's team, committed a straw man fallacy. She stated that we said that peace cannot exist in development. We never said such thing. Peace can exist in the midst of development, but development will always lead to that instance of peace. Without development, you cannot reach to that point of peace. She also made mention to when we said that to get to reduced combat, that reduced combat is peace. Getting to reduced combat is a process. You have to do many things. You have to implement many new infrastructures. You have to do many things. It is a process like development. Also, she mentioned countries like Sudan and Venezuela. Yes, they are not currently at peace, but they are constantly progressing and developing to try to get back to that point of peace. They are in the process of developing, the process that will start bringing them one step closer to peace. If they stop developing now, they will never reach that peace. If they stop progressing, they will stay where they are and they will stay in their war-ridden countries, being unproductive and starving. Then again, my worthy opponent kept saying that peace is needed to get development, but she is hiding the fact that a process, Mr. Chair, a process is required to get to that peace. Development is that process. She also stated that it is common knowledge, if there is no crime, then businesses will flourish. Common knowledge? That is an appeal to belief. That is no evidence. You cannot use a widely believed thing without proving evidence that it is the truth. That is not a valid way of providing information in a debate.
1 minute remaining.
Now, through the terms of this debate, peace, the absence of disagreement and conflict, is the coveted, craved, cherished result that the motion places before us. Now, we unfortunately do not live in a world where the absence of disagreement and conflict has ever existed truly. And it might never actually exist. The only way for it to exist at this moment is if you let your eyes be shrouded by ignorance and deception, and you pretend that the conflict that oozes out of human nature and its society does not exist, but development. It allows us to get one step closer, to reach our arms just a little bit further on our quest to achieve true and complete contentment. As I close, I would like to reiterate our stance. Development is the process that puts us on the track to get to our desired, demanded destination. Development helps us take one more step on the treacherous trek to peace. Peace is our destination. Thank you.
Thank you, Sierra. I was just about to cut you off there. Nice here with the wrap up. Do we have any points of information for Sierra? No?
Yes, 1 point of information actually.
1 point of information from Ambika. Do you accept, Sierra?
I accept.
So my opponent, my worthy opponent keeps saying that peace, that it's a process. I would like her to identify what exactly are the steps in this process into achieving peace.
Well, my worthy opponent, for each situation, it would vary, but to get to that you have to develop to get to that peace, because if you start at a place with conflict, you're going to want to diffuse that conflict. You're going to want to come to at least a mutual agreement in that conflict. But the thing is, you have to develop both your mindsets. You have to develop, both people's mindsets have to develop. They have to make motions. They have to take actions. They have to develop themselves to be able to reach a peace with one another.
Any further points of information?
No, no, sir. No, Mr. Chairman.
No. Wonderful. So then we will now summarize the motions. There are no points of information in the summary, right? We'll summarize the motion, and our first proposition speaker, Ambika, is also the summary speaker. So you now have 4 minutes to summarize the motion that was proposed by SWAHA Hindu College. So go ahead, Ambika.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, in order to fully bring together this entire debate, I would like to ask a couple of questions to really get your thinking and ponder upon this whole debate. Do you want being a doctor, lawyer, teacher to go to work and have to face the absence of peace? Don't you want when development occurs? Don't you want it to be long term? Don't you want development to be there for your children? Don't you want your children to grow up in a developed environment in which they can work every day safely? I cannot stress the point enough that peace brings development. How is it possible that peace could be absent and development could be present? How is that development? How is it that development could occur in the absence of peace? How is it that infrastructure can be built in a place in which war is present? How is it that we can turn a blind eye to the lack of peace and focus only on development? How do we sustain development when there is greed, corruption, and unsafety? These are the important questions that I would like to receive answers to. Switzerland clearly showed that the arrival of peace was necessary for a stable structure to develop efficiently and sustainably. A diffusion of conflict is necessary for peace, as my opponent said. In order for development to occur, peace must be present. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with a quote today from Nelson Mandela, who said, "Peace is the greatest weapon for development that any person can have." Thank you.
Thank you, Ambika. And now we invite to speak for the first time today, Rajan Grant, who will be summarizing for the opposition.
Honorable Chair, Aristotle said it, and science confirmed it. Mr. Chairman, if I had glasses like you, I'd be taking off my glasses right now so I could get real with you all. I myself tried to put the cart before the horse. All my efforts were futile because there simply must be order, just like in a debate. And we began this debate by providing definitions for keywords in the motion. We described the term peace as a state of not being interrupted, total contentment. We then highlighted that to get to said state, there must be a process, something that will take us to that place, or as the motion puts it, some sort of development or change to get to that resolve. Some sort of development or change that brings peace. B-R-I-N-G-S. ING in the motion indicates that it's present continuous tense, something ongoing, a process. However, there's nothing in development that says it has to be positive. It is simply change. We emphasize that although some may usually place countries like Norway, Switzerland, New Zealand, and Iceland on a pedestal of peace, there was a process that brought them to that place. The iceberg analogy further clarified how 90% of development goes on below the surface, leading to what the world sees above the water. Mr. Chairman, allow me to remind everyone that the UN Peacekeeping Resource Hub's 2020 publication shows that peace is not simply limited to the absence of military conflict. However, it is an attempt to obtain some form of peace more closely regarding issues like social conflict, the impact of environmental degradation, ethnic cohesion, political stability, and many, many more. My opponents argue that peace brings development, but they neglected to highlight that there's a preceding process, development, that brings that peace. Let me remind you of two of the instances where they indicated so. Firstly, when they said social peace leads to development. However, they neglected that even if this is potentially true, Many countries, there are many challenges countries face to even obtain some form of peace. Secondly, they said Hong Kong, Mr. Chairman, they highlighted Hong Kong, but they so craftily refused to mention the process that led to that peace. As our second speaker, Sierra, stated in her speech, our opponents fell into the trap of littering their arguments with logical fallacies. Logical fallacies expose the lack of structural integrity within an argument. Some of the examples she highlighted were a slippery slope, cherry picking, several appeals to belief, and hasty generalization. In closing, we cannot have the result without the process. Before we see the tree's fruit, we must see the tree's roots. Before the cart, we must put the horse. Under the 10%, we can find the 90%. Therefore, there must be order, there must be a process that contributes to result. So we stand completely convinced that development brings peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Rejan. And that brings us to the end of the very first debate. We give a round of applause to all of our speakers who spoke today from SWAHA Hindu College as well as Northgate. We thank you for the very spirited debate, ladies. You have started us off on a very, very high note. And of course, thank you to our researcher today who did not speak, but Jeremiah Gill, who researched for SWAHA Hindu College. Thank you for participating as well. So as the judges deliberate on the very first motion, I believe Joel will play a video for us, which is part of the armchair discussion that was had earlier this month. So do we have that video now? So I think we will get a video as we give the judges time to deliberate on the very first motion. Yeah. All right, welcome back. Have I been spotlighted? Can everybody hear me? Okay, wonderful. Welcome back to the COTE Youth Debate. Our judges have deliberated results at the end. Right, we won't get it right now. We'll invite our chief judge to present all of the results at the end. So for now, we will move on to our second debate, right? And our second debate today will be on the motion, be it resolved that climate change is currently the greatest threat to humanity. That is, be it resolved that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity. And proposing the motion today, we have a presentation College Chaguanas, and opposing the motion, we have a Parvati Girls Hindu College. So on the proposition team, we have our first proposition speaker, who will be Varun Ramguli. I hope I said that, Ramguli. I hope I said that correctly. I did transcribe it here. Varun Ramguli. He is an enthusiastic student who enjoys playing piano and drums and loves public speaking. At 19 years old, he is working diligently on his upper 6 subjects in hopes of excelling in his CAPE exams in order to attend university. Varun believes that, though it may not always be obvious, there are always important lessons that can be learned in all events of life and discussions among people, right? I do believe that as well, Varun, that there's always a lesson in every single event. And then the second person proposing the motion today would be Adnan Sheikh, right? Who is 18 years old and born in Kashmir, India, and he migrated to Trinidad and Tobago. So he has always been passionate about having his voice heard, and his personal philosophy leads him to always aid in the service of others, while simultaneously forging his own path on which to walk. Adnan is an avid debater, having participated in the JA debates as well as the UE debates in previous years. He was part of the winning team of the UE debate as well, and the AmCham, I think that's AMCHAM Youth Forum last year. He has participated in many debates, not always winning, but picking up many important lessons on the way. Adnan's hobbies include photography, hiking, and music. So we welcome Adnan. And then finally, we will have a summary speaker from Presentation College Chaguanas, who is Rahul Gopi Singh, who was born and raised in the northern part of Trinidad. Well, he said northern part, so I don't know if that includes several parts. And he has a passion for mathematics, and his ultimate goal in life is to become a teacher to dispel the misconception that math is hard. When he is not thinking about math problems, he frequently plays video games. The only thing greater than his love for math would be his love for video games and perhaps his love for sleep. So we welcome our proposers today from Presentation College. I look forward to hearing from you just based on those bios. And of course, opposing the motion is the ladies from Parvati Girls Hindu College. And first we have Celine Kisoon, who will be the first opposition speaker. She is 15 years old, a Form 5 business student, and a grade 5 pianist currently attending Dijon, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, Dijon School of Music. I may not be saying that correctly. Celine will clarify when she's speaking. In 2017 and 20, she participated in the Trinidad and Tobago Music Festival. Her hobbies lie in the realm of visual arts, painting and drawing, and she hopes one day to become an entrepreneur in the fields of art and technology. Then our second opposition will be Priya Balkisoon, and Priya Anna Balkisoon is a Form 5 business student, just like Celine, who is an active community member, participating in everything from religious gatherings to volunteer work. She's a member of Peer Resolution and Junior Achievement, who intends to study law and psychology. And then summarizing for Parvati will be Emily Chattergoon. Right? Emily is a proud Tobagonian whose hope is one day to change the ruling of the country. It is her hope to see Trinidad and Tobago as a prosperous first world country with high development rates, known for sun, sea, and sand, where citizens can live in peace and not fear absurd crime rates. Being born and raised in Trinidad has nurtured her appreciation for numerous sights, sounds, and alluring tastes. So again, our second motion today is be it resolved that climate change is currently the greatest threat to humanity. So debaters, you know the rules. We don't need to go through them again. Please obey the rules that you know very clearly, specifically the time rules. And we invite Varun to give us the first proposition. Varun, take it away.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, judges, chairperson, timekeeper, my worthy opponents, and my beloved audience. Today we are here to debate the motion that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity. And by the end of this debate, I will assure you that my colleagues and I will, without a shadow of a doubt, convince you that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity. But to begin, I must define a few key terms in my argument. Firstly, climate change, according to the United Nations, is changes in the Earth's climate, whether that may be directly or indirectly caused by human activity. It is, but not necessarily limited to, the Earth's temperature, weather, rainfall, wind patterns, and sea level. According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, humanity is defined as the quality of being human and can be used to collectively refer to the entirety of the human race. Threats to humanity are events that can hypothetically cause damage to humankind on a global scale. The University of Cambridge agrees that the greatest threats to humanity are entirely man-made. These include, but are not limited to, artificial intelligence, rogue biotechnology, nuclear challenges, and you may have guessed it, climate change. Allow us to show you that due to the devastating effects of climate change, the conflicts that climate change will bring about, and the disastrous event that we cannot reverse it very soon, together with the points that my colleague will share in a few minutes, that climate change is in fact the greatest threat to humanity. Firstly, we should note that other threats to humanity are highly technologically based. And as of the year 2020, our technology has just not advanced far enough to cause any harm on a global scale. However, we are seeing the effects of climate change firsthand as citizens of the Caribbean. According to the World Health Organization, all populations of the world will be affected. However, some are more vulnerable than others. And get this, those islands most in danger are small island developing states and low-lying coastal regions. What does this mean to us? It means that the Caribbean is on the front line of the war against climate change. Our sea levels are rising at 4 millimeters every year, and this spells trouble for our citizens who live in the low-lying coastal areas. Our dry seasons are getting longer and our rainy seasons are getting shorter, which spells trouble for our food and clean water supply. And ladies and gentlemen, let us look at the frequent storms and tropical depression that we've been experiencing. The quota of names for the storms in the Atlantic region as of this year was exhausted, which has only ever happened once before in history, ladies and gentlemen. We should note that climate change doesn't necessarily have to affect the mortality of people to be a threat to humanity. By the year 2050, the United Nations projects that the world's population will cross 10 billion. I would like to ask you a question. How will we manage to feed 10 billion people if we cannot feed the 7.6 billion people that we have on Earth today without decreasing rates of food production due to what? Due to climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, it should not be a far thought to think that more and more global superpowers and more countries will get into conflicts and wars over these dwindling assets. Let us now bring to your attention a report that is done by the World Economic Forum every single year. It is entitled the Global Risks Report, and it talks about threats to humanity. Really nicely, it talks about threats to humanity based on likelihood and impact of that threat to humanity. In the past 4 years, environmental threats have been the #1 threats based on likelihood of occurring on the report. And in the year 2020, the top 5 threats based on likelihood of occurring have all been environmentally based, with each and every single one of them having roots in climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, if you aren't convinced, let us now look at the impact factor then. Until the year 2017, hundreds of minds who are extremely knowledgeable on the interconnectedness of economic, geopolitical, societal, technological, and environmental threats believed that weapons of mass destruction were the most dangerous thing to humankind. And yet, in the year 2020, they have now deemed extreme weather patterns due to climate change the most dangerous threat to humanity. Not the overuse of technology, not genetically modified foods, not nuclear material, but extreme weather. It is said, ladies and gentlemen, that when people speak, we should listen. And when qualified people speak, ladies and gentlemen, we should listen completely. Pay heed to the warnings of these experts and let us do something before it is too late. My final point, and perhaps my most crucial point, is that our window of opportunity to prevent irreversible change to our atmosphere is declining very rapidly. It is said that if the world's temperature increases by more than 2 degrees Celsius, the UN projects that the devastating effects that will follow, we, humankind, will not be able to recover. Up to 1 million of the estimated 8 million species of plants and animals on Earth will be at risk of extinction. They found, and I will quote, "Nature is declining at rates unprecedented in human history." Many will try to sell you the idea that climate change is a natural phenomenon. Yes, it was back in the ages of the ice ages. This time, climate change is completely our fault. And who are to blame? Us. Ladies and gentlemen, if we follow the current trends, we will cross the 1.5 degree mark by the year 2030. That's just 10 years from now. And at that point, given the magnitude of the situation, no other threats in the world will matter anymore. You and I, together with everyone else, will be on a ship sailing to our impending doom, ladies and gentlemen. And the sooner that the people of the world dispel their ignorance to this subject, is the sooner that we'll be able to make the hard decisions and concrete changes that we have to make in order for the continuity of the human race. My dear audience, I know I've talking for a little while, but if you've taken nothing from the discussion, please remember this. Only when has the last tree died, the last river poisoned, and the last fish caught will we then realize that we cannot eat money. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Varun. That was a very spirited and humorous introduction to our motion today, right? All of us being on a ship to somewhere. So we will, do we have any points of information for Varun? Points of information? Ladies?
Hi, yes, hi. So Varun, as one of your points, you stated that in 2050, we would not be able to feed our population being at 10 billion, but we currently produce enough, well, more than we need. It's just about the allocation of our resources. So what will you state when we are increasing our food resources?
All right, so you have a choice to accept that or reject that, right, Varun? Do you accept
I
it?
accept that point. And I think it's a brilliant point to think that our opposition is thinking more and more about the motion. It is very nice to know that people believe that we have enough resources or we're producing enough to feed the entire world. But in fact, this is just not the case. By the UN and the WHO, they say that our food production rates are decreasing due to climate change. If our food production is decreasing and we cannot feed 7.6 billion mouths at this point in time, 30 years from now, when we reach 10 billion people, according to the UN, how will we manage to feed that? And then we should also take it back to the entire problem. Why is our food rates decreasing? Due to climate change.
All right, thank you, Varun. That was a long point of information and a long reply, so I think I will end the point of information here, right? And I will now invite our first opposition speaker, Celine, right, to argue against the motion. So Celine, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chairman, guests, teachers, and students. The topic for debate is that climate change is currently the greatest threat to humanity. My opponent has expounded on the impact of climate change at humanity at great lengths. While these effects are profound, we put before you that there are presently other major global issues that pose a more imminent and direct threat to humanity. We contend that issues of COVID-19, human rights, and poverty are greater threats to humanity than climate change. Today, as the first speaker, I'll be talking to you about COVID-19 and human rights, while the second speaker will be talking about poverty. I'd like to start off by saying I do agree with the effects presented by my guilty opponent, but most of these effects are taken from a more futuristic or long-term approach, even when the motion clearly proposes that climate change is currently the greatest threat to humanity. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at the world around you today. In a mere matter of months, the world has been transformed as a result of COVID-19. This pandemic has and continues to affect people's health, livelihoods, and economic survival. According to the World Health Organization, there are presently over 44 million cases of COVID-19, with 1.1 million deaths and still counting, keeping in mind that this was only from 10 months ago to present. Top infectious disease experts have predicted that, and I quote, "The next 6 to 12 weeks are going to be the darkest of the entire pandemic," end quote. The death toll is increasing and countries are facing their second and third wave. In other words, we are nowhere close to putting COVID-19 behind us. At this stage, doctors and scientists remain uncertain for the long-term effects of COVID-19 on the human body and its impact on humanity as a whole. In terms of the economic impact, economies are facing increased unemployment with the closure of businesses. In fact, 60% of businesses in the United States which closed during March lockdowns may be permanently closed, according to Yelp's economic report, dated September 16th. Households, malls, and street vendors have been impacted, with Trinity Mall becoming a virtual ghost town. As a result of business closure, the unemployment rate has also increased, and the travel industry as we know it has ground to a halt, with some airlines closing down. Others have drastically cut the salaries of their staff. Look at Caribbean Airlines, where pilots experience a 50% pay cut. Countries have seen their GDP shrink at unprecedented levels, and the International Monetary Fund has predicted that global growth will fall by 4.9% this year. In its World Economic Outlook report, the IMF indicated that the Caribbean region would contract by minus 5.2% for 2020, with Trinidad and Tobago's economy contracting by 4.5%. The tourism sector alone faces an output decrease as high as 50 to 70%. Although a handful of countries have no recorded cases of COVID-19, they too remain affected by the economic impact of this disease, with reduced travel and tourism. It is projected that vaccines might not be fully available internationally until 2022. In the meantime, COVID-19 has and continues to affect every single life on planet Earth, and is proving to be an immediate and direct threat to all of humanity. And I'll bring you to my second point, equal human rights. Today, many persons are not treated equally based on their color, gender, their ethnicity, their country of origin, and their sexual orientation, among many other things. In many societies, discrimination permeates all aspects of the victim's life, including employment, wealth, education, home ownership, healthcare, and incarceration. On an individual level, however, the denial of human rights will result in psychological stressors and trauma. It prevents persons from being able to achieve their full potential and self-actualize. Instead of living a life of dignity, many people suffer from deprivation and injustice. In fact, in the US, Black students were more likely to drop out of high school and were 10% less likely to gain a college education. Women have been shut out of careers and were unable to break the glass ceiling as a result of discrimination. As such, the entire world misses out on ideas and creations which should have materialized if everyone were afforded equal rights and an opportunity to reach their full potential. Denial of human rights also has an economic dimension. For instance, women earn 81 cents for every dollar a man earns for no other reason than gender. Violence and civil unrest often occur in societies where discrimination is pervasive. For example, women are often victims of domestic violence, sexual harassment, and exploitation. In Trinidad and Tobago, it was reported in the Daily Express on October 15, 2020, that 154 women lost their lives to violence within the last 3 years. Out of these 154 cases, 65 were directly as a result of domestic situations. Internationally, there have been reports of women being gang raped, doused with acid, and denied their right to an education in numerous countries, such as Africa and Syria. If you recall, several months ago, countries were literally set on fire as protests were raging in the fight for equal human rights, stemming from the murder of George Floyd. Racism, therefore, poses a greater threat to humanity now than climate change. The denial of equal human rights in all its forms, such as racism, bigotry, misogyny, and xenophobia, deny persons of their very humanity and the right to be treated as equals. As Nelson Mandela put it, to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. So, Chairman, distinguished guests, teachers, and students, what then of humanity? While climate change is an important issue, we acknowledge that we firmly believe that issues of COVID-19 and ensuring human rights are certainly more pressing sources of concern to humanity at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celine. Points of information, gents?
Yes. So, point of information.
Do you accept, Celine?
Right. So the opposition listed many harmful effects of COVID-19, and we agree COVID-19 does have many effects on humanity. However, the proposition has listed a report saying that climate change is the greatest threat but the opposition has never given us any evidence to support that COVID-19 is a greater threat to humanity than climate change.
Okay.
Hold on,
Yes.
I did hear a question in there, Raul.
How would you respond to this accusation?
Okay.
Well, if you look at the death toll compared from climate change to the coronavirus pandemic, it is the death as a result of climate change within the last year is usually 150,000 deaths, and whereas COVID-19, the amount of deaths as a result of COVID-19 is 1.1 million, as you heard in the presentation. I just mentioned that, as well as the effects. 45 million are affected with that, and that is concrete evidence that was provided by the World Health Organization. But you see, in climate change, where's your concrete evidence and statistics to back up your claims that climate change is a more prominent issue than COVID-19?
I'll take another point of information. We have a minute left.
Right, so you spoke about the number of deaths per year. However, this COVID-19 has only been going on for 1 year, and it is projected that if we get a vaccine or something like that, that it could end. However, our battle for climate change is going to take decades and centuries. How would you respond to this?
Well, you see, that is not pertaining to the motion. As you can see in the motion, it states clearly that climate change is the more imminent and direct threat to humanity currently. So you keep denying the word currently. So that is the main point in this debate.
Thank you. Thank you, Celine. And Raul, who will moving forward always phrases points of opposition as questions. And so we invite our second proposition speaker. So to propose for presentation, College Chaguanas, Adnan, right? Remember, you have 6 minutes and he will give us the second proposition speech. Go ahead, Adnan.
All right. Good afternoon. All protocols have been observed. Ladies and gentlemen, in these uncertain times, we must rely on a virtual forum to carry out this debate. But there's one thing for certain. Climate change is the greatest threat that humanity faces. My illustrious colleague has already defined the parameters for our discussion and has also posited that the disastrous effects of climate change are ever present and they may act as a catalyst through which we can suffer other obstacles. Now, the opposition, they have attempted to distort the facts by talking about COVID-19, by talking about poverty, all of these things. Yes, I agree. They are threats, but they are not the greatest threats. I would like to remind you of the motion. Please take a read. Is climate change the greatest threat that humanity faces? They keep bringing up COVID-19, but this is a fallacy. This is a red herring fallacy. They're trying to distract you from the motion at hand. Yes, COVID has killed many people, but so has car accidents. People have fallen and died. Are all these things the biggest threat to humanity? No, they are not. Why is climate change the biggest threat? Because it affects everything. There's going to be a higher sea level. There's going to be extreme weather. There's going to be so many things that can cause death, that can cause many other problems that I will speak about further in my speech. But what they're saying is just not making sense. They're also talking about the human rights. They also made the point about human rights. Human rights, that has been that is a battle that humans have fought for years, and we will continue to fight for years. But climate change is something that has also been going on for years, but they're ignoring the magnitude of the situation. Really, they're not seeing the fact that climate change is huge and it can cause a lot of problems. And they also made mention of poverty. But I would like to talk about what Mr. Emma Jones Parry, the permanent representative of the United Kingdom to the United Nations, said. He said that there is no choice between a stable climate and the fight against poverty. Without the first, the second will certainly fail. And there ends my rebuttal. My audience, I implore you, please do not be hoodwinked by the opposition's pie in the sky notions and their shopping list of logical fallacies, which I already mentioned. I am here to lift the veil being cast over your eyes and show you why climate change is truly the greatest threat that humanity faces. My colleague already told you what climate change is, but let me tell you why it happens and what it will cause. Human activities during the last 50 years have heated our planet up. For millennia, atmospheric CO2 levels have remained below 280 parts per million. Now it has crossed 414, doubled, ladies and gentlemen. We have doubled the CO2 levels in our atmosphere. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, a group of 1,300 independent scientific experts from countries all over the world have agreed that this is mostly due to the progressions that we have made as a society. Our population grows larger, we use more resources, burn more fossil fuels, and thus there is more CO2 in the air, competing with the oxygen that we need to breathe. We can see the effects of climate change everywhere. My colleague has already shown that global temperatures have increased according to the European Environmental Agency. Increasing temperatures are likely to cause an increase in the number of heat-related deaths. As a matter of fact, the hotter the planet gets, the more people that die. It is that simple. 350,000 people can die from a long heat wave that lasts 5 days. And this number will only increase as the temperature increases. As a matter of fact, 70,000 people did die in 2003 between the months of July and September in Europe alone from heat strokes. And as a result of this heating that I mentioned, the ocean has warmed. And that's not all. Ice sheets are shrinking, glaciers are retreating, there is decreased snow cover, global sea level is rising, and there is declining Arctic every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is causing all of this, but yet my opposition would like to convince you that climate change is not the biggest threat that humanity faces. The problem is that climate change is not just an environmental problem. It is a social, economic, and environmental problem. It will affect everything. Let me mention what Mr. Emma Jones Parry, the permanent representative of the United Kingdom to the United Nations, said once again. It has become increasingly clear that climate change has consequences that reach the very heart of the security agenda. Flooding, disease, and famine, resulting in migration on an unprecedented level in regions where resources are already stretched to the limit. This perfectly shows that climate change is not just an environmental problem, but that it affects nearly every aspect of human life. Therefore, it is the greatest threat that humanity faces. See, ladies and gentlemen, climate change is like a disease, one with a delayed effect. We cannot completely assess the damage that it has caused, but we know that it's there, and we know that if we don't act now, the mortality rate will be high. Mother Earth was diagnosed with this condition many, many years ago, but people have not taken it seriously, not at all. Save the Earth began as a catchy slogan to propagate environmental awareness, but now we must truly save our planet from dying. My dear audience, many would have you believe that guns and bombs are the greatest threats to humanity, but this is not the case. Men and women in power steadily prepare for warfare against bullets and tanks, but the real opponent does not utilize such a worldly arsenal. We must instead face droughts, heat waves, and famine. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in the information era. Arm yourselves with knowledge and prepare for 21st century warfare. I would like to end with the words of English poet. Actually, before I end, let me mention one more thing. Let me talk about the fact that why climate change is such a bad thing is because to stop climate change, first of all, we need to do something extremely hard. And that's we need to unify the world. We need to get everybody to enact environmental policies. There needs to be global changes. And to get these global changes running, I think we should start now, because that's going to take some time. And time is what we don't have. And now let me end with the words of the English poet, William Wordsworth. Life is divided into 3 terms: that which was, which is, and which will be. Let us learn from the past to profit by the present, and from the present to live better in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Adnan. Points of information from the ladies.
Yes, sir. Sorry. I do have 2 points I wanted to ask about.
Sure.
As our first speaker.
One second, Emily. You need to accept it. Do you accept it, Adnan?
I do
Yes,
accept.
I do.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, as he was speaking, I noted that he said climate change will affect us on the whole. But does climate change have us wearing masks to protect ourselves and others? Right now with COVID-19, people wear their masks, they stay indoors, they sometimes even refuse to go out because they're afraid of getting the virus to die. Even the effects of COVID-19 is not completely known on the human body. How could he possibly say that climate change is a more imminent threat? Because as we have been saying, we are focusing on the current issues that affect humanity.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you for that point. Thank you for reminding me. I was actually also supposed to say that exact thing, the wearing the masks, the vaccines, we have, just wear your mask, stay at home, and you wouldn't get COVID. How is that big of a threat? Like, it's not that big of a threat, whereas climate change, that is a threat that you can't wear your mask for, that you can't stay home for. Trust me, when those sea levels rise, all of us are drowning with it. That's not something you could vaccinate against. And that is why I'm saying that climate change is the biggest threat. You need to stop mentioning this COVID that is a red herring. You're distracting everybody from the fact at hand. And the fact at hand is that climate change is the biggest threat to humanity. I hope that answers your question.
You have the second point of communication, of information, Emily. Make it pointed. Yes. No diatribe questions.
Yes, he played into my question because with everyone staying indoors, they use more electricity. And with that being known, more radiation comes out. Doesn't that contribute to climate change?
And once again, let me accept. I accept. And once again, they come with the fallacies, a slippery slope fallacy. You're going to talk about people have COVID, so people staying home, so people using more technology, more radiation. You can't just go from there to there to there to there. You need to make a statement, and you can't do it like that because, yeah, there could be more radiation, but there's people that don't use their phones. There's people that would be at home just reading books. So you can't use that and apply it to everything else. That's too extreme of an example.
All right, thank you, Adnan.
Thank you.
And Emily for your questions. And of course, now we will revert back to the opposition to give us the second set of arguments from the opposition. And those of us who were listening will know that she's going to speak on poverty. So we invite Priya to give us the second opposition argument.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, judges, honored guests, viewers, teachers, and students. The topic for our debate is that climate change is currently the greatest issue to humanity. The second speaker from the affirmative team has tried to tell you that climate change is currently the greatest threat to humanity. I would denounce that claim. And I question, what exactly is the immediate threat to human life that climate change poses? My colleagues on the opposing side speak as if climate change is going to drastically freeze, melt, or flood the earth within the next few years, which is not realistic by any standard. It will take its course maybe within the next 100 years or more, giving us time to adapt to the changes that it brings, as we always have. Whereas the COVID-19 pandemic is uncertain in terms of when a vaccine will be available, or even if it will be available, or when the pandemic will end. In other words, climate change is inevitable and has not taken a drastic course, whereas COVID-19 is leaving us with uncertainty and is worsening with time. As the report released last night by the BBC stated, the second wave, which is occurring, is expected to be worse than the first. So what is more damaging to humanity? You have gone into climate change, stating about our Arctic Circle. Did you know that there was recently released by NASA on October the 21st, 2019, stating that the ozone hole has been the smallest recorded since its discovery. Climate change has always been here, and again, will always be here, But how is climate change bad? Climate change always occurs, and it's stated to be happening over a period of time. It changes directly from high to low temperatures. So again, I question, how is it more damaging to humanity? Let me go on to one of the more prominent and prevalent threats currently threatening humanity's survival: poverty. Take a minute and ask yourself, what can you buy with $12.90 per day? Maybe a doubles and a water, maybe a breakfast of bacon, cheese, or roti and vegetables. Now imagine on living on less than $12.90 each day. In fact, 10% of the world's population lives on less than $12.90 a day, which is approximately US $1.90. Poverty has severe implications for educational attainment levels and standard of living. With respect to education, 70% of global poor-age children, 15 and over, having no schooling or only some basic education. As we all know, in this increasingly competitive world, it is exceedingly challenging to find a job and lift yourself up out of poverty when you have no skills, no education, and no training. As a result of poverty, many children are forced to work at an early age, resulting in further exploitation. Climate change will always be occurring, and man will always adapt. But how can we survive if our youth across the world are not given the resources and a chance to make it because of their economic circumstances? Poverty affects the health and longevity of humanity. In fact, approximately 3.1 million children die each year from undernutrition. Hunger and undernutrition contribute to more than half of global child deaths, as undernutrition can make children more vulnerable to illness and exhibit disease, according to UNICEF 2018 study. Poverty affects every country in the world today, not only underdeveloped nations. In countries like America, the poverty rate is one of the highest in the developed world. It is projected that the poverty rate for 2020 will be 9.2%. Poverty is an increasingly important topic since the World Bank has indicated that the face of poverty is ever changing. They note that poverty will be found in more congested urban areas, affecting persons who work in informal services and manufacturing instead of agriculture, as with the norm. In other words, poverty will be increasing in middle and high income countries as well. Furthermore, for the first time in 20 years, global poverty is actually expected to increase due to the COVID-19 pandemic. My opponent has also expounded on the fact of rising sea levels, and we do acknowledge that sea levels are rising due to climate change, but consider that 1/3 of the Netherlands is below sea level and some areas are 7 meters below sea level. The Netherlands has adapted to living below sea level 400 years ago. And since then, as we have seen, technology has improved. So we can adapt. So I ask again, how would you feel if it was you, your child, or your sister in poverty? Climate change will always be here. And again, man will always adapt. And we have been adapting. And there are food shortages due to misallocation of resources, which I have stated before. And it is a fact that the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization forecast that crop yields increase by 30% by 2050. You said that we wouldn't be able to produce enough to feed 10 billion people, according to the UN, I believe, by 2050. Well, guess what? Crop yields are increasing. And nobody suggests that climate change won't impact crop yields. I'm not stating that. I'm just stating it could, but such declines should be put into perspective. Wheat yields increased 100 to 300% around the 1960s and have been increasing since, while a study of 30 modules found that yields would decline by 6% for every 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature. So you said that we wouldn't be able to survive if climate change increases by 2 degrees. Well, let's just say the statistics say different. So I would just like to end stating that, again, our topic is be it resolved that climate change is currently the greatest issue threatening humanity's survival. And we rebut that it is not the greatest threat to humanity. When women and children are being declined human rights, when the color of your skin determines where you will be in society, determines where and what job you will get. When being a woman in countries such as Africa, and where my opponent was born, India, has affected their very living due to asset dowries being placed on women who only want equal rights, only want a chance to make it out here, only want the chance. We need to be given the chance. Poverty affects people worse and adds to the death rate because of people starving and not being able to afford food. We have it, but they can't afford it. And India has one of the highest poverty rates in the world. Again,
I'm not sure. I agree. Excuse. I'm not sure what happened with the time there, but you should be wrapping up, right?
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear.
I didn't hear it either, which is why I'm interjecting.
How much more time do I have?
Just take a few seconds and wrap up your argument.
Okay, sorry. Yes. So, in conclusion, viewers, listeners, and judges, please consider my points and my colleagues' points, and you decide what is currently the greatest threat to humanity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Priya. And I apologize that the timer, something happened with the timer, it did not go through. I apologize on behalf of the team, right? Do we have any points of information for Priya? Gentlemen? Yes, Raul.
On a point of information.
Do you accept, Priya?
I accept.
Turn on your mic.
Yeah,
Okay,
I accept.
So my colleague Adnan has already showed that climate change affects us not only environmentally, but all aspects, including economic. So wouldn't the speaker agree that poverty is directly impacted by climate change and hence aids in our argument in stating that climate change is in fact the greatest threat to humanity?
Wouldn't you agree that poverty actually increases climate change? Let me just say that if you are in a country that has low resources and would it be hard to burn a couch or trees, which affects climate change, and in the long term, let's just say that, can you please restate the question? I kind of got off track there.
So my colleague Adnan stated that climate change not only affects us environmentally, but also other aspects of humankind, including economically. So poverty, when you're arguing that this has negative impacts on humanity, it aids our argument as climate change directly impacts poverty, and hence it's aiding our argument in stating that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity. Wouldn't you agree?
I actually would disagree and say that poverty, as I was saying before, affects climate change and is a greater issue to humanity currently. As I have stated in my argument, that climate change and temperatures are decreasing. So no, I would not agree that it helps your argument. Yeah, it is. You keep forgetting the point that our topic is be it resolved that climate change is currently the greatest issue to humanity, which it is not.
All right, thank you, Priya.
Thank you.
Is there more time for another point of information?
I will not allow it because, you know, he had to restate his question, so it has taken too much time.
Not a problem.
Right?
Thank you.
Yes, but I appreciate the spirited debate. So to bring this motion to a close, we will now have the summaries, right? So we have gotten a couple points of information from this gentleman, from Raul, but he will now summarize for the proposition side at this point in time for Presentation College. And remember, you have 4 minutes. I am not sure what's happening with the timer because it's not coming through as clearly as it was in the first debate. But what will happen if the timer doesn't come through, and this is to all debaters, if the timer doesn't come through at the 4-minute mark, I will just ask you to wrap up, okay? All right, go ahead, Raul, and summarize for the proposition. Yeah.
Good afternoon, my dear audience. All protocols observed at this point. Today, we, the proposition, have taken a firm stance in asserting the notion that climate change is the greatest threat to humanity. The first proposition speaker started off today's debate by properly defining the terms of this motion. He then went on to give us evidence that climate change is a massive threat to humanity by listing its adverse effects. Natural disasters will devastate coastal areas. Lives will be lost and children will be starved. My colleague then presented us with evidence stating that not only is climate change a massive threat to humanity, but it is in fact the greatest threat to humanity according to the Global Risk Report by the World Economic Forum. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Currently, in 2020, they released a report in which climate change was the greatest threat to humanity based on both and likelihood. The second proposition speaker then went on to expand on the point that climate change does not only affect us environmentally, but all aspects of humankind. A tiny increase in temperature will lead to hundreds of thousands of lives lost. And ladies and gentlemen, as we have already shown you, this increase in temperature can happen as early as the year 2030 if we are not careful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, while all this was happening, the opposition was feeding us with ignorance. Do not be misguided by their weak arguments laced with a series of logical fallacies. The opposition speaker stated that COVID-19 and poverty are greater threats to humanity than climate change. However, this World Economic Forum, the report that said climate change is the greatest threat to humanity, it consists of hundreds of experts in their fields who have spent years researching the topic. So are we saying that the opposition's interpretation of these statistics are better than the interpretation of these well-studied scientists over all these years? Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition has attempted to convince us that climate change is not urgent and it is not dire. And to that I will say, how dare you, Greta Thunberg? My dear audience, I beg of you to wake up from the dream that we will cross that bridge when we get there and see the reality that is climate change. We are staring into the abyss of self-destruction if we choose to ignore the fact that climate change is killing us, and if we choose to ignore the fact that climate change is the greatest.
1 minute remaining.
Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you, Raul. And thank you for sticking to time. We will now have Emily to give us the opposition summary. Go ahead, Emily.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, honored guests, teachers, and fellow students. The topic for our debate is that climate change is currently the greatest threat to humanity. But we, the negative team, believe that this statement is false. I'll be reiterating the important changes that my colleagues have said. As Varun has said in the beginning, we are educated, listen to the educated. But then Raul has said that we, the negative team, are trying to tie you up with logic. Isn't that not what they are saying? We come from a point of logic where Statistics show, we show our statistics that climate change does not currently affect us as bad. Whereas our first speaker brought forward, COVID-19 has and continues to ravage the earth, leaving tragedies in its wake. A vaccine is said to not be internationally available until 2022. Countries such as the Americas have had their GDP fall drastically. The IMF has even projected that global growth will fall by a whopping 4.9%. Additionally, she had noted the staggering infection and death rate that till this second continues to rise. And it had been brought about by this disease, COVID-19. Till this second, we also currently have brave men and women fighting for simple rights that we are all said to have. Because in this world where our skin color decides whether we live or die, or gender predetermines what our earnings will be, majority of these doesn't make sense. Should we not live in a world where we can say we love the earth before we cry that we need to save it? Things such as the Boko Haram kidnapping, the numerous deaths of our Black brothers and sisters, such as Trayvon Martin, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, not an imminent issue. Cases of these show the lack of equality in the world, the bigotry, misogyny, xenophobia, and racism, which still exist to this day. Our second speaker elaborated on the impact of poverty now becoming highly prevalent in developing countries and is going to become worse due to the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. Money that could have gone into expenditure, which actually goes towards the developmental projects of the government, are falling because people who are falling into the massive poverty that is currently happening goes to grants to them that goes in welfare payments and such. Additionally, persons in poverty do not achieve their full potential and the economy misses out on benefits associated with that. Why would we want to live in a world like this? Should we not change the systems that dictate these rules to us first? Should we not live happily on this earth before we cry about its demise? With that being said, Chairman, distinguished guests, our worthy opponents, teachers, and students, we believe that humanity's greatest threats currently remain COVID-19, equal human rights, poverty. These are currently more direct threats to our species as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done, ladies from Parvati and gentlemen from presentation. That was an extremely spirited, exciting debate. And I generally have a sense at the end of the debate of who I think emerged as the winner. And I must say, I'm walking away from this one pretty unsure. So I think Candice and our judges have a strong task on their hands at this time. And to give them time to deliberate, we're going to show you a few videos, right? We're going to the debate. I see Priya commenting in the chat that she's restating currently, but the debate is over, Priya. The judges, I think the judges received your point, the point of the opposition team very clearly, that it's about current. We got a very clear argument from the opposition on the currency and immediacy of their arguments versus the proposition, who gave us a strong argument for the eminence, right, and how dire the situation was. So a very strong and spirited debate. Good job from both sides. Extremely impressive. I agree with Dr. Brizant and Martin. So we will give our judges time to deliberate, which is part of why I'm going on with this logorrhea right now on this on talking. But we will show a video. I know we have a video for you guys, so I invite Joel to just play a few videos as we let our judges deliberate. And in the meantime, you know, opponents, sip a little water and stick around, because remember, you'll be getting your results at the very end. So Joel, let's get those videos now. That the Caribbean community's vision of an economic union is but a fleeting dream that is increasingly difficult to realize. And proposing the motion, in support of the motion, will be the UWI School of Business and Applied Sciences, or Roytec. And then opposing the motion will be the Department of Economics here at the UWI. So it's really an internal debate. Roytec proposing and Department of Economics opposing. And our proposition speakers, again from Roytec, will be Lydia Alexander, Yamir Fletcher, and a summary by Kwame Trim. So on our speakers today, Lydia is from Chaguanas, and she is the administrative assistant at 3M, right? I hope I'm saying that correctly. Her mission statement is to inspire positive change through spreading God's word and mentoring. Her personal and professional goal is to not only allow her past to define her future and pursue ongoing professional development. Is to not allow her past, I apologize, to define her future. So she would like not to be defined by her past and to always pursue ongoing professional development. Her hobbies are hiking, traveling, and watching movies. Yamir Fletcher is a customer service representative at CLX Gyms and a proud student of UE Roytec. Yamir is fascinated by the world of economics and he aspires to one day become an educator. He is committed to working hard to gain knowledge, achieve his goals, and inspire others. He enjoys helping others and experiencing new things. And then finally, on the proposition team from Roytec, we have Kwame Trim, who will be doing the summary. And Kwame is a self-motivated serial entrepreneur and executive director of Trim Group Limited. Originally from San Juan, Kwame came from very humble beginnings. His professionalism and passion for business propelled him to challenge himself even further by enrolling as a student at the UE Roytec Business Management Program. Kwame loves being an inspiration to others and trusts that one day he will be able to use his expertise and experience as motivation for persons along their journey towards achieving success. So those will be our proposition speakers. And our opposition speakers today opposing the motion from the University of the West Indies Department of Economics will be Esselon Dumont, right? And I hope that I said that correctly. Let me check my transcription there. Esselon Dumont, right? Will be the first speaker, and she's an undergraduate student pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Economics, a BSc in Economics at the UE. She is passionate about economics, about politics, law, and agriculture, with a vivid interest in human and sustainable development. Esselon believes that human development should be the priority of a nation, and no nation can achieve real growth and development if we do not invest in the minds of the people. Her goal is to become an eminent economist that can make a significant contribution to the economies at the domestic, regional, and international level. Then our second opposition speaker will be Devon Rodriguez. Often described as an academic, Devon is amongst a small community of young leaders with an interest in public life in Trinidad and Tobago. Devon is a former winner of the TGU Excellence Award in 2016 and a recipient of the TTO PAD, I don't know if it's called TOPAD, but the TTO PAD Award for Academic Excellence in 2014. He is currently enrolled at the UE pursuing a BSc in biology with specialization in biotechnology and microbiology. Devon has spent 10 years advocating for social change on a variety of issues ranging from sustainable development to youth in care. Devon is a former youth ambassador of Trinidad and Tobago to the United States and resident president of MOBAC, right? Or the MOBAK Foundation 2019-2020. On his downtime, he pursues studies on economic and social development and generally spends a significant amount of time learning new skills. So welcome, Devon. And then to summarize for the opposition, we will have our final speaker of the day will be Chantel Thomas. Chantel is an undergraduate student at the UE pursuing a BSc in economics with a minor in tourism management. She is the editor for the UE Economic Society and the Assistant Secretary Treasurer for the UE One Life SDA. She has a passion for volunteering through tutoring and gaining knowledge on social and economic inequalities. Chantel hopes to use her knowledge in economics to help in alleviating these inequalities. So we welcome our three speakers at the tertiary level, who will be joining us at the very high standard that has been set by our secondary school students to debate the motion, be it resolved that the Caribbean community's vision of an economic union is but a fleeting dream that is increasingly difficult to realize. So to propose a motion, first, we invite Lydia Alexander of Roytec.
The Caribbean Sea both unite and divide. It gives us a strong sense of regionalism or Caribbeanism, but simultaneously surrounds most of us and reveals a strong sense of individualism, the antithesis of meaningful integration. Therefore, in this place, nationalism trumps regionalism. Adapted from the Caribbean Integration Legend, Norman Gervan, 2007. Pleasant good afternoon, Mr. Chair, esteemed judges, accurate timekeeper, worthy opponents, and my very attentive audience. Today we debate the motion, be it resolved that the Caribbean community's vision of an economic union is but a fleeting dream that is increasingly difficult to realize. Please allow me to define key terms and outline the parameters of this motion. According to Oxford Dictionary, fleeting refers to an event, or should I say, fleeting refers to an event that is short-lived. According to its website, the Caribbean Community CARICOM was established in 1973 after the demise of Federation and CARIFTA. Today, it has 15 full members with a major aim to promote regional economic integration through its implementation body, the Caribbean Single Market and Economy, CSME. Its major challenge has been to overcome xenophobia and establish a monetary and economic union. According to the World Trade Organization 2020, an economic union is the highest form of economic cooperation among countries. It is a common market with a high amount of coordination of economic, financial, and monetary policies between member countries, and in some cases, a single currency. It is the proposition's position that, although not impossible, the formation of an economic union is becoming more and more difficult as time passes. My colleague Yemi will advance data on the disparity in development among territories and the implementation gap. I will elucidate on the nationalistic obstacle, political hindrance, cultural as well as historical barriers that makes the journey towards the apex of the economic integration pyramid. This brings me to our major point in this process of waking us up from this fleeting dream, which is most territories of the Caribbean appears to be overly nationalistic. What the late Professor Gervan was alluding to was that the same sea that unites also divides, as it completely surrounds most of us in the Caribbean and gives us a sense of individualism or nationalism, and brings us to the notion that each territory feels as though they are the center of the world. Furthermore, there exists a deep degree of parochialism or big island versus small island argument and xenophobia in the Caribbean. Even though we stand to gain economically from a deeper integrated arrangement, such as an economic union, there exists a deep sense in which we value the traditions of our sovereignty and feels that sharing economies will jeopardize that. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this economic union is a dream. However, the European countries, despite a history of mistrust and 2 world wars, were able to put aside their differences and create an economic union, the European Union. The geopolitical reality is that most members of the European Union are not separated by the sea, but makes up one continuous landmass. They see themselves as both nationalists and regionalist Europeans. The irony is that the country that is separated from the rest of Europe by water, Britain, never accepted a single currency and now is engaged in a messy divorce referred to as Brexit. It is similar to CARICOM. Britain also cited a strong nationalist sentiment on parochialism and xenophobia. Like Britain, each individual Caribbean country has a strong sense of nationalism that trumps regionalism. To ensure that my colleagues opposite are woke, let us look at another major point, that is the history of regional integration movement. This historical evolution is further testimony of failed attempts to gain any traction that resembles a sustained economic union. From the failed federation 1961, it took another dreamy 45 plus years to establish a pseudo common market in 2006, that is the CSME, by the revised Treaty of Chaguanas, which can be best described as a bit dysfunctional. My opponent may see this evolution as progress towards an economic union, but it took 62 years since the federation to today of virtual sleepwalking to be only at this partial common market state. Really, ladies and gentlemen, my opponent may point to the seemingly low-hanging fruit of the economic union of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS. This fruit is a very high fruit and in desperate need of a rod. As the OECS is an economic union of
1 minute remaining.
similar levels of development and parochialism and harmonization of economic policies are not problematic. Don't worry, if we are still dreaming, my colleague Yumi will provide resuscitation needed via the region's dismal implementation gap, let alone even think of an economic union. In conclusion, as these issues of nationalism, trumping regionalism, parochialism, and a failed history of integration are still increasingly present today, leading to the institution of an economic union is becoming increasingly difficult. My colleague Yumi will further elaborate how we are attempting to climb this economic union mountain without the proper tools, as he will critically assess the structural weakness of the prerequisite of the economic union, that is the common market of the CSME. He will expose this woefully inadequate implementation gap and reoccurring problems at different level of our member states. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. I can see you had much more to say. That was it. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Do we have any points of information for Lydia? Points of information.
Points of information.
Yeah, from Devon. She accepts.
You highlighted particularly in your speech that nationalism trumps regionalism. My question is, with the institutions such as UNI, which is also an integrated effort by CARICOM, we see a number of international students, both from different Caribbean countries, coming and studying at the St. Augustine campus, and vice versa, at the campus in Barbados and the campus in Jamaica. So my question is that, is it that we are able to look over nationalism to achieve certain goals? For example, this goal would be to achieve education and research, the example with you. So can we overlook nationalism to achieve our goals?
Okay, but if and the walls of a house is weak, can the roof be securely placed on it? No, CSME is based on a long, divided, slow implementation evolution. When mixed with the walls of xenophobia, populism, and nationalism, it makes the roof of that economic union increasingly difficult. They can be viewed as 15 Brexit as the same seed that brings us together, also divides us. And we also know about the disparity movement, because that already contributes to a rising tension.
All right, thank you, Lydia. We have one more point of information. I got a message here from Essalon Dumont. And let me first publicly apologize. When I was reading the bio, I think I said she, and I want to publicly apologize. I said that was my mistake and I meant he. And he has a point of information. So keep it terse, very succinct, because we are running close to the end of the 2 minutes. Okay, Essalon, go ahead. Or should I read it for you?
Good afternoon, everyone. My point of information is, do you accept first?
I accept.
Okay. You alluded as and used a lot of examples such as Brexit. What Brexit have to do with this?
Brexit has a lot to do with this. The fact that Brexit is able to the European Union separation and division in Brexit, if it is the Caribbean region is looking forward to forming an economic union, I believe we have a lot of things to learn from Europe and Britain, as the same seed, brings us together, also divides us, and that strong sense of nationalism is prevalent in the Caribbean community.
Okay. Thank you, Lydia. I see that you had a second question here, but I will not allow it as long because we are way over the point of information time. Instead, I will just ask you to stay on as the first speaker opposing the motion. So you may go ahead.
Thank you. Good day, Mr. Speaker, timekeeper, viewing audience, and to my goodly opponents. Today I present as the opposition in the motion, be it resolved that the Caribbean community's vision of an economic union is but a fleeting dream and is increasingly difficult to realize. We have come to argue against this motion that it is not a fleeting dream and should not be seen as a dream, but as a goal. You see, what my goodly opponents came to do here today is to question our ability to lead. It is to question our ability to make decisions, and it's a question our ability to integrate. The points I will be examining is the extent to which past and present economic integrations are leading towards an economic union, and the process of harmonization of monetary and fiscal policies is taking effect in the region. I will give my colleagues the privilege of introducing their topics and points of the argument. You see, my kind opponents took the liberty in defining what economic integration is, but they didn't really touch and expand on what is an economic union. Allow me to present to you the true definition of an economic union. According to the Corporate Finance Institute, an economic union is one of the different types of trade blocs. It refers to an agreement between countries that allows products, services, and workers to cross borders freely. The union is aimed at eliminating trade barriers between the member countries. However, the union requires the integration of monetary and fiscal policies so that member countries coordinate policies, taxation, and government spending related to the agreement. I want to thank my opponents for agreeing with us and saying that it's not impossible to achieve the economic union. That's something they should deserve kudos for. In the Caribbean, we stand united as a common market through the Caribbean Single Market Economy, fondly called CSME. But I want to enlighten the audience and to educate my goodly opponents about some Caribbean history. It seems as though my opponent is not aware of it. You see, all of the Caribbean territories share the same common history that is part of the Caribbean definition, which is enslavement, indentureship, and colonialism. Integration has always been a priority for the Caribbean from the inception of the West Indies Federation to what is known as CSME, a common market. An economic union is the fourth trading bloc of the economic integration, and we currently stand one step away as a common market. The West Indies Federation was established in 1958 by British Caribbean Act of 1956 with the collapse of the Federation in 1962. However, after the demise of the Federation, the territories needed another integration movement. Hence, the Caribbean Free Trade Association, CARIFTA, was created in December 1965 with a demise in 1972. This is a reference to CaribbeanElections.com. It was also agreed that the Free Trade Association was the beginning of what would become the Caribbean Common Market. Quickly emerged CARICOM in 1973 and was formed as a customs union in 2006. The CSME was formed and assumed the trading block of a common market. So you see, my dear friends, I can't see how my goodly opponents have the audacity to come here today to preach to you that achieving an economic union is a fleeting dream. In the 39th regular meeting of the Conference of the Heads of Government of CARICOM, dated 6th of July 2018, Heads of Government reviewed the operation of the CARICOM single market economy and reiterated the need to accelerate its implementation. They also agreed that the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on the CSME will meet quarterly to guide and invigorate the implementation process. Heads of Government regarded this as a major historic step that would encourage greater use of the free movement of skills as it ensures levels of comfort for families. The Heads of Government placed greater focus on advancing those areas which would help create enabling support measures for a competitive single market, because our region's leaders have smelled the coffee and they understand that we don't need to compete with each other, but rather compete as one in the international markets. Mr. Speaker, I don't see how achieving an economic union is a fleeting dream. Where is it? An economic union, and as I stated in my definition, my correct definition, is where you eliminate all trade barriers among member countries. And according to the Global Trade Analysis Project, statistics shows us that 25% reduction in non-tariff barriers and trade costs within CARICOM and vis-a-vis non-CARICOM trade partners can boost trade and improve welfare gain for all members at about $6 billion, or 7.6% of the region's GDP in 2018. It can also restructure economies from contracting to expanding sectors, resulting in net employment gain across the region. I would like to remind my opponents, in case they forgot, numbers don't lie. I want to concretize my argument from an article from the IMF 2020, where it states that greater cooperation is the key to furthering regional integration in the Caribbean. While these economies are, and they're speaking about Caribbean economies here, in case my opponents are confused, a small and supply constraints may potentially limit benefits of economic integration. Acting as a group can enhance the scale, bring widespread benefits, and helping the region further tap into global value chains. That is, regional integration should not be the end goal, but a means to an end of deepening Caribbean integration in the global economy. Mr. Speaker, what I said is directly from the experts. So who are we to question this? At a time of momentum and economic integration seems to have stalled, close cooperation in high priority areas for the region can help demonstrate benefits of coordinated action and serve as building block to ultimate goal of full integration. The IMF also stated that Caribbean economies have long recognized the value of working together, improving regional integration, for instance, through an intra-regional trade and policy coordination can help regional small economies build greater resilience and scale, as well as enhance bargaining power on the global stage. According to the World Bank, dated 29th of March 2017, states that Caribbean countries can benefit from deeper regional integration. It further went on to say deeper regional integration allow cost sharing and risk pooling with stable growth. Small economies often lack resources to make large public investment. Investing in shared public service such as regional transportation infrastructure will allow cost pooling and improve connectivity in the region. Mr. Speaker, in the midst of our current economic climate, COVID-19 revealed the vulnerability of the region and showed us the formation of an economic union in the Caribbean is an absolute imperative. It encourages the need for regionalism, as this will give us the benefits of economies of scale. And that will result in lower unit costs of production and reduced prices, in case my opponents don't know what it was. Basically, the reality is, on a map of the globe, some of our Caribbean countries are nothing but a dot. And this is why an economic union will benefit the Caribbean, as this will build greater resilience and scale, as well as enhance bargaining power on the global stage. One, let us, as Caribbean people, have a safer centuries. We've been exploited by the colonizers. My opponents came to justify examples from them. So what my opponents are saying, that we shouldn't let them follow, I think my opponents will have to revisit the definition of independence because it's clearly lost to them. In closing, I would like to close in the words of Bob Marley, one love, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. As Buju Banton will say, let us as the Caribbean people rule our destiny. Mr. Speaker, the opposition rests.
Thank you very much.
Point of information. Point of information.
Point of information. Do you accept?
I accept.
Good afternoon, my good sir.
Good afternoon.
Question. You mentioned the CSME, sorry, is one step away from achieving this goal. My question to you is, how long? For how long? Because it was mentioned by Miss Lydia, my colleague, that it has been upwards 60 plus years, and they have yet to achieve anything remotely close to forming this union. So my question to you is, how long have we been one step away, and what do you believe it would take to achieve this union?
Okay, I will, due to the time constraint, I will have to limit myself on this answer. As your colleague once said, the first proposition speaker, is that we must use examples from Brexit. And I believe that answers your question, so you're trying to come cuffle me, but I will not go on further, but your colleague answered that question. Thank you.
We have time for one more point of information, if there is one. There isn't. So,
yes, point, sorry.
You do have one, Kwame?
Yes, point of information as well. You hearing me?
I am, but I can't see you.
Sorry,
okay.
Apologies. So, my good sir also made comparison to the
firstly, firstly, I did not accept.
Okay, so Salon does not accept your point of information, and that wraps up points of information for the first opposition speaker. So we will continue on with our second proposition speaker proposing the motion, and then we have Yamir Fletcher, right, who will speak on behalf, again, on behalf of the proposition. So we'll have our second speech on behalf of the proposition from Yamir Fletcher. So Yamir, you may go ahead.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, my colleague Lydia was no doubt able to awaken you from this fleeting dream of an economic union. And she provided strong evidence based on the prohibitive barrier of strong nationalism, uneven levels of development that we see still to this day, and the region's dismal historical track record of integration. Now, the opposition made the point that the regional leaders of CARICOM, we are questioning their ability to lead. Now, according to Bruce Golden in 2018, some regional leaders and former heads of CARICOM, those same leaders, said that the current state of outstanding actions required to create a fully functioning common market and economy is both distressing and embarrassing. So that is in direct contradiction to his point. And also, the Ralph Gonzalez in 2018 expressed his lack of optimism in the CSME's ability to achieve its goals in the foreseeable future, given that lack of political will and uneven state of development among member states. So this is also in direct contradiction to his point when he made reference to the CSME and that we are, as he said, one step away from achieving it. Now, we have a large implementation gap in the CSME policies. After almost 15 years since it came into effect, the implementation gap still exists. This gap, as well as the one between lesser and more developed countries in the region, have in fact widened over 2006 to 2018, according to Hassan et al. In an IMF paper on regional integration. We also see that the customs union and the common market are still incomplete to this day, with differences applied in extra CARICOM trade with the tariffs. Now, this begs the question, how could we fully achieve an economic union when we cannot even fully achieve its prerequisite, which is a common market? Now, the opposition is mentioning that we are one step away. Now, this problem of the implementation gap and us not being able to fully accomplish this economic union, in part, it stems from a lack of political will to implement these important components of it. We see only partial implementation of chapters 3, 5, 7, and 8 of the revised Treaty of Chaguanas. And this has led to this has resulted in a pseudo single market where there exists to only a limited extent the movement of goods, services, and skilled labor. Chapters 4 and 6 have not even been implemented, involving common sectorial and macroeconomic policies, and as well as harmonization of company and taxation laws. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the CSME should instead be named the CSM, since this single economy is but a fleeting dream that we are seeing is increasingly difficult to realize. And again, this stems from the lack of political will to enforce the policies needed to implement it, with Trinidad and Tobago saying just now and Jamaica saying soon come. Now, we must accept that the CSME is stuck on a hill, and many believe that what lies at the top of that hill is not worth climbing for. We, the proposition, advocate that this lack of political will makes climbing to this economic union hilltop increasingly difficult to achieve. Now, the meager implementation of CSME, we see that it is most apparent in sectorial programs and the enabling environment at 0%. The capital market integration at also 0%, and harmonization of laws at only 1%. The completion rate in 2007 of the overall single economy only scored 8.9%, and a decade later in 2017, it only increased by a dismal 1%, ladies and gentlemen. And this was according to Govan in 2007 and Hassan et al. In 2019. Now, the sector with the lowest compliance of all at 3% was the service sector, according to Professor Bryden in the Caribbean Journal of International Relations. This sector, ladies and gentlemen, accounts for over 70% of GDP in 10 of the 14 CARICOM economies. And now another major point from the proposition is that there are design flaws within the CSME. And in part, this has to do with reinforcing national sovereignty of the member states, according to Govan in 2007. And this leads me to my final point, that the Caribbean economies are not structurally set up to easily achieve this economic union. We see that, okay, the Plantation School of Best, Levitt, and Beckford, they highlighted the Caribbean's structural dependence on extra-regional countries for trade as opposed to each other. Now, in terms of the region's major service, which is tourism, we see little inter-island tourism taking place compared to extra-regional tourism. Now, extra-regional trade continues to account for over 80% of CARICOM's trade overall, according to Professor
1 minute
Bryden in
remaining.
2018. Is this not alarming? Therefore, it follows that if regional free trade has not significantly impacted most CARICOM members, then this contributes to this dream being increasingly difficult to realize. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, in light of all these obstacles highlighted, not only is this economic union a fleeting dream, but one that is increasingly difficult to realize. I thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Amir. Any points of information from the opposing team?
Yes.
Do you accept, Amir?
Accept.
Okay. You said IMF, but no year. How do we know it's recent?
I did. When I mentioned Hassan et al. In 2019 of the IMF working paper on regional integration.
But I heard no year. So maybe a year must left out that.
No, so there is no back and forth, right? Your question is proposed to the person who answers, right? Is there a second question?
Points of information.
Yes, Devon, go ahead. Do you accept, Amir?
Accept.
Yeah.
You highlighted, you said that your candidate, sorry, your delegate speaker, your first proposition speaker,
yes,
you said that she gave evidence that suggests that the economic union is but a fleeting dream. But I say to you that she did not give any evidence to suggest that the economic union is a fleeting dream, but instead what she did was use nationalism and xenophobia as strong mans to support her point. So my question to you is, what are the evidence that suggests that the economic union is a fleeting dream? And don't use race as...
No, I assume that's the end of the question.
That's the end of the question.
Okay. Now, how much more evidence would the opposition like? I have presented a lot of evidence regarding the CSME's wide implementation gap to this day since its inception. I've provided evidence on the partial implementation of core structures within the CSME, and this has led to it not being able to come to fruition to this day. I've provided evidence on the low completion rate of the single economy. I've also provided evidence on the Caribbean structural dependence on extra-regional trade as opposed to our own. My colleague Lydia provided much evidence that supports our view on the motion.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Devon, as you are on screen, you will stay and give us the second argument from the opposition team. All right, please stick to time.
Before I continue my arguments, I want to highlight a few points. Number one, the proposition did not define what an economic union is. Number two, they talk about years and years and years and be stuck in the same place or nothing ever happened. But I say to you that, for an example, the United States has 243 years of experience, 243 years of independence. And in that 243 years of experience, they have learned from their mistakes. And it was only in 2016, with regards to the comment about xenophobia and nationalism and discrimination, in their 243 years of independence, it was only in 2016 when they decided that they wanted to give gay rights to the people of the United States of America. And I bring that back to the point of they expect that fiscal, monetary, and economic policies that occur in different nations to come under to form a document or to form a document in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. Brexit has occurred in, I believe, in 2018, and it has taken over 2 years, and they still haven't come to a deal because these deals involve national fiscal policies, national economic policies, and national monetary policies that countries have to consider when they make their budgets, that they have to consider with their relationship, with financial relationships with other countries. They talk about, she mentioned the word history, and she wanted us to be woke, but all she did was mention the word history. And if I could give you a bit of economic history, one of the reasons why the Caribbean nations are in the positions that they are in today economically is because our economic development was impeded upon because of the plantation society, the plantation economy, which made us produce one crop, export that crop to Britain or to the other metropolitan countries and allow them to exploit that, and we got nothing from it. And in our 50 to 30 something years of independence, with respect to what country we're looking at, we only had 50 something or 30 something years to build our economy. Some of us are now discovering natural resources and so forth. Like I mentioned earlier, the first proposition speaker did not give any evidence as to how the economic union is a fleeting dream. Instead, what they did, or what she did, was use nationalism and xenophobia, which I indicated through the institution of the UWI, through the CCJ, through the CDB, and through CSME and CARICOM itself, that we are able to overlook nationalism. We are able to overlook how we may feel with regards to race and people entering into our countries to achieve economic integration or to achieve integration on a whole. So my points are very simple. Since its inception in 1989, CSME has achieved several feats with its aim of becoming an economic union. The introduction of the CSME saw the CARICOM body develop from a free trade area among islands into a common market through economic policies and a shared desire among member states for economic integration. The changes from free trade to a common market is simple in theory but difficult in practice. Yet the CSME has been able to achieve all with their mandate and have remained one step away from attaining the status of a full economic union. This is not to say, however, that the CSME has not taken steps to fill the definition of an economic union. An economic union, for definition's sake, refers to all tariffs on goods and services being removed from trade between member countries, creating a uniform single market.
1 minute remaining.
There are also free movements of labor, enabling workers in a member country to move and work in other member country. I have a lot more, so I don't think I'll be able to cover it in 1 minute's time. So I do apologize for that.
I take that to mean that you are wrapping up here. Devon?
Yes.
Like I said, it flows and is a lot more, and I can't cover it within less than a minute. So I do apologize for that.
Okay. Well, I will open the floor to points of communication. I think Yemi, do you have one?
Point of information.
Do you accept it?
Yes, I accept. Yes, I accept.
Yeah, so it seems to me that the
Time's up.
it seems to me that the opposition is relying upon misplaced optimism, and this is not really effective when not placed on facts. So how do you respond to the point made that the CSME, as you mentioned, is making steps towards forming an economic union? How would you respond to the wide implementation gap that still exists, to its core policies even? How would you respond to that?
Good question. The CSME has accomplished several feats. The CSME has accomplished the free movement of goods and services. They have established the right of an establishment, which allows citizens to create businesses within one country and then expand it in multiple countries. They have achieved a common external tariff, which means that goods imported from extra-regional countries have a common duty when entered into the region. There are free circulation of goods and free movement of capital, as well as free movement of labor. So the economic dream is not, it is one step away because they only have one more step to meet their mandate, which is the harmonization of laws with regards to economic policy, monetary policy, and fiscal policy measures. That is the only step that the CSME has to achieve.
All right. Do we have any other points of information?
Points of information.
Yes.
Now, how would you respond to the fact that because you keep mentioning that we are one step away, and you make it seem like this one step is so small or so easily attainable? How could we move forward when we haven't even fully set up and stabilized it at the CSME I'm referring to? How can we make that step forward when we haven't even solidified our current step, which is the CSME?
Like I said, the CSME has one step to go forward, and that is the homogenization of laws. With regards to, let's say, the COVID pandemic, this has highlighted to the Caribbean economy that we need a greater level of integration in order to provide advancement in technology, which is one step closer in achieving their homogenization goals. And with coming to this realization, as the opposition believes that the CSME also realizes that they need to have a collaborative effort in order to achieve the integration goals, be it whether it be through academic, through the judicial systems. The fact is we need a collaborative effort in order to achieve the goals of our integrated bodies. And one of those things that we need is fiscal and monetary policies, so that we could fund our institutions, our integrated institutions, to meet our integration efforts.
All right, thank you, Devon. And that brings us to the end of the point of information segment. Also brings us to the end of all of the speeches for the day. Well, the main speeches, the argumentation. We will now move into our summaries. And then to give us our 4-minute summary for the proposition team, we invite Kwame Trim.
Good afternoon, audience. I want to thank my colleagues, Yumir and Lydia, for providing such salient points as it relates to the Caribbean's vision of an economic union, which is indeed but a dream, a fleeting dream, based on divided integration movement, devoid of political will, overly strong sentiments of individualism and nationalism. My friend Yumir also provided points with regards to xenophobia and parochialism, big island, small island, we bigger than you kind of thing. In addition to which, he also went on to point out serious design flaws within the CSME, in that decisions of the Conference Head of Government can only be implemented by each member parliament or executive action. He also went on to suggest that the CAICOM market is more important to some than it is to others. Essentially, they both provided salient points and information suggesting or alluding to the fact that Caribbean economies are not structurally set up to achieve or easily achieve any economic union. My misguided and seemingly misinformed, disappointingly misinformed opponents made comparison to the European Union and CARICOM. CARICOM, if they had to compare the both, I would categorically refute these claims and trivialize them and deny them, disregard them to nothing more than chalk and cheese. My friend Lydia, my colleague Lydia, pointed out the fact that even after 60 years, 45 plus years after the initial agreement, the CARICOM or Caribbean territories are still yet to achieve anything remotely close to an economic union. Laughably, my opponents also alluded to COVID-19, as if I don't know if COVID-19 is going to be here forever, but they seem to suggest that somehow magically or mysteriously, the COVID-19 pandemic is going to allow us to mysteriously form an economic union, which I also disregard as wishful thinking. The quality of the Caribbean pool, as mentioned by colleague Yumir again, Lydia, as a matter of fact, the quality of the Caribbean pool, the concept of individuality, of physical separation of the Caribbean territories, the geographic location, the absence of according to my friend Yumir, he spoke about the leadership, the absence of the social driving force needed in which to implement change is just not there. So in closing, I would want to, I trust that now that my friends have been dealt a very potent dose of smelling salts, so to speak, they would be awakened from their slumber and be able to understand and realize that the vision of a Caribbean vision of an economic union is indeed but a fleeting dream that is extremely difficult to realize. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you and I rest my case.
Thank you very much, Kwame. And then our final speaker of the day will be Chantel, who will summarize the opposition arguments for this motion. Go ahead, Chantel.
Mr. Chairman and the House, it is my pleasure at this time to provide an overview of what transpired during this debate. My fellow delegates addressed pertinent areas which encapsulated the Caribbean's vision of an economic union is by no means a fleeting dream that is increasingly difficult to realize. After providing an intricate definition of the economic union, our first speaker perfectly noted that it would be amiss of us to deny how close the region is to becoming an economic union. Being one step away considering the successes of the Caribbean single market economy, do you think it is reasonable to call something so near in sight a dream? My colleagues also asserted that the Caribbean's shared past has encouraged the creation of shared economic and social institutions, like the Development Bank and the Caribbean Court of Justice. We mentioned this to say that the Caribbean has proven their ability to work with each other. Thus, any chapter in the region's book of integration should not be treated as a fairy tale, but rather an attainable goal. My team also mentioned that the results of COVID-19 have highlighted the need for regional integration, and this can be used to drive and to complete the vision of an economic union in the near future. Mr. Chairman, as it relates to the opposing team, we would like to expose their continuous act of using the downfalls of the Caribbean to blind you from the potential of the region. These failures should not be used as a measure of success, but rather as a heads up on what to do. Just like the establishment of the European Union, which took longer than envisioned to establish, we should not give up on our vision of an economic union. Also, they supported their argument on the basis of nationalism. Nationalism, in essence, was born to solve what tribalism could not handle. In this century, we face various problems like climate change and globalism. Ladies and gentlemen, we are behind this trend of our late establishment in the 1960s, and we must now and are taking the opportunity during COVID-19 to strengthen regional ties. Mr. Chair, I'd like to close off with a quote from the Jamaican statesman Norman Manley, who claims great causes are not won by doubtful men and women. This team shares such sentiments since we will not allow self-inflicted doubt to hide the truth that the vision of an economic union is not a dream, but in fact in the palm of our hands. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Chantel, for giving us the final speech of today, a good close. And that brings me to the end of my role as the debate moderator today. I thank all of our speakers and our one researcher from the 3 debates and the 3 motions that have been proposed today. I think you all did an excellent job. I congratulate you on getting through it. And with no further ado, I would like to hand you over to Joelle, who will take over the proceedings for the rest of the afternoon. So again, thank you.
Unmute.
Yeah. It was really a pleasure this afternoon listening to the debates, and it is really my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks for this afternoon. I would, of course, like to thank our head of department, Dr. Darren Conrad, for always supporting these types of activities, especially as it relates to youth and youth involvement in economics. I would like to thank our moderator, Mr. Ronald Francis, who provided really some yeoman service in controlling the flow and providing some clarity during this debate. I would like to thank our secondary school teams. I hope you guys forgive me a bit. I'm going to try to say everyone's name because I think that they really did a very good job in terms of making this event really a success. Ms. Zia Lamont Harper of Northgate College, Ms. Syria Rodden, Ms. Regina Grant of the SWAHA Hindu College, Ms. Sage Mitchell, Ms. Ambika Parvati, of Presentation College, we have Mr. Varun Ramgoli, Mr. Mehboob Sheikh, Mr. Rahul Gopi Singh. Of the Parvati Girls Hindu College, Miss Emily Chattergoon, Miss Priyana Balkisoon, and Miss Celine Kisoon. And I just want to really say a special thanks to all the supporting teachers who really worked with their teams. We're talking about Mr. Christopher Williams of Northgate, Mr. Pradeep Mathura of SWAHA Hindu College, Miss Krista Ram Ratan of Parvati Girls Hindu College, and of course, Mr. Wendell Long of Presentation College. All right. We would also like to thank our tertiary school debate teams. And I would like to start off, of course, with Roytec, UE School of Business and Applied Studies. We have Miss Lydia Alexander, Mr. Yamiri Fletcher, and Mr. Kwame Trim. I'd also like to thank the UE team as well, Ms. Chantel Thomas, Mr. Devon Rodriguez, Mr. Eslon Dumont, right? And it would be really remiss of me if I didn't thank the coordinating committee, the COTE Youth Events Coordinating Committee. And I'd like to place on record my thanks to Wendy and Chanel and all the staff at our Office of Marketing and Communications, our dedicated conference assistant, Ms. Sidrina Carr, the secretariat at the Department of Economics. And I really can't thank everyone enough for their involvement in terms of making sure that people were informed about this. We went through the rules, we really, really thank you guys for all of that support. I would like to thank the teams in advance who will be moving forward in the finals of the COTE Youth Debate, which will be on Thursday, November the 12th from 1 to 4. And I really want to say good luck in advance. I just want to make sure that you guys know that we would also be having our conference this year from the 25th to the 27th of November. It will be online. We are currently just in the process of launching the website, and we would, of course, send you guys the links for it. This conference this year will be free, so we really want to see you guys out there, and it will only be between the hours of 1 to 4 on those 3 days. So we're really looking forward to seeing you there. I know that the judges will be deliberating currently, so we're just asking if you could just wait 5 minutes so that they could finish deliberate and we would know the results of the debate competition. So in the meantime, just to entertain you guys, we're just gonna play some light music, and thank you guys again, all of the participants, the moderator, the debaters. You guys really made a really vital contribution to this debate. And we are back. And I would like to, of course, introduce the Chief Judge for this afternoon, Ms. Candice Hughes Bengoshe, who would be giving the comments to the teams, as well as the results for this afternoon. So I'm going to hand over to Candice. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. What an exciting day we had today. I want to first of all say congratulations to all of our teams for their enthusiastic participation. Thank you to the coaches and the teachers in the background who really gave these teams the opportunity to prepare and to be ready for this debate today. I want to really say that it's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of this, even in a virtual setting. Last year, you know, we were in the auditorium, and being in an open space with each other, you get the energy from your friends and from the crowd, and being in a virtual setting is much different. But yet we were able to persevere and to see these three teams debate so vigorously against each other and bring so many pertinent points to the table. Statistics, information, examples. It was really a thrill to be a part of this entire proceedings. So I'm going to give general comments to each team first, and then I'm going to give the results for each section and category. So I would start with our beginning team, which is SWAHA College. A very good start you all had. I love the tone of your first speaker. It was very engaging, great information, and it was evidence that it was well researched. So congratulations in that regard. I love the style of your debate as well. You asked a lot of questions. Do you think so made it very relatable to anyone who was listening or being a part of the proceedings? I also like your use of a lot of examples, especially locally and regionally. You spoke about Venezuela. Everyone can relate to that. Everywhere that you live, you see migrants coming in and the Spanish influence. And so you can relate and understand that example very much, as well as using a very good example from your own backyard of Sangre Grande. So kudos to you, hats off to you, an excellent job in that. For Northgate, I love the analogy that you use where you spoke about the chicken and the egg, and then you brought it to the cart being before the horse, and really looking at development as a process, a very smart strategy in that regard. You started a little shaky, but your skill of rebuttal really flourished as your argument progressed. Sometimes you rebutted a little too much and forgot that you need to now progress your argument, but overall very good on that. Many examples also you intertwining what the proposition said as well as rebutting, a very balanced approach to gate. When it came to presentation, out of the gate, you had a running start, excellent start. You used your points to give you that guide, and you spoke very, very free. All of your presenters was able to sort of speak off of the cuff and give that information that you brought to the table very good. Even though you may have your points to guide you, you were able to really deliver very easily and very fluently. Good memory and use of the information, speaking about the red herring trying to distract and that kind of analogy and symbolism in there. It was really good to see you gentlemen intertwine the information presented as well as rebutting and bringing new information. Very, very good job. For Parvati Girls College, I love your strategy of zoning in on the word currently and saying, hey, you know, we are speaking about a threat, but we want a current threat. That was very, very good strategy and very well used. A good define of your terms using local and regional examples was also one of your strong points. You outlined your argument and you stuck to it. That was very good. In terms of the UE School of Business, a very good start. Excellent presentation with passion. Your information was presented very eloquently and captivated the audience from the jump. Secondly, you used CMSC and nationalism, and you challenged that argument from the beginning all the way through. I don't know if that was your strategy to pull everybody into CMSC, but they definitely did, because they had to rebut to that. And so it sent everybody down into that pigeonhole, whether you wanted that or not. You really commanded that argument from the beginning to the end, using that CMSC as a guideline. Lots of information as well presented in your statistics and lots of symbolism. For the UE economics team, burst out of the gate. If you blinked too long, you were going to miss the information that this young man said. He presented so much information in that 8 minutes. I don't think anyone could have packed more information than he did in that time. And so he gave you a lot of information to present, a lot of information to rebut. And so he really started it off very, very feisty. I like the use of the dream versus the goal. That yes, it's a fleeting dream, but it's a goal that we should be trying to achieve within the region. I like the use of a wide range of information in terms of your breadth, your statistics, your articles, the IMF work. You had a plethora of information and statistic use that really helped to embellish the information that you were presenting. So overall, I want to say to teams before I give the results that there is a difference between debating and public speaking. And some teams are able to debate better than others. Although you had time to present your propositions and you knew what you were coming to say, the real art of debating is not just reading your script or memorizing your script, but being able to listen to what the other team has said and being able to now intertwine that information, rebut what they said, and then progress your argument. So it's not just reading off a summary that you presented or prepared, or reading off your beginning or reading off your second part, but really and truly, while the other person is speaking, taking that information, making notes of it, using statistics that you have prepared and saying, aha, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to say that this is wrong. This is some false information. You all are disturbing the, trying to lead us astray, and then progressing with your argument. So rebuttal is extremely important in it. You can't just present your information, but you have to rebut and then move on. So in the first bout between SWAHA and Northgate, the team taking this battle understood the true essence of debate, rebuttal, using the information presented, dispelling it, and moving forward with their argument. The team who took the edge was Northgate. Put your virtual hands together for Northgate. Give a little snap. Put your little thumbs up on the screen. Put it in the chat. Give your comments where it be. In that first bout, we are saying congratulations to Northgate for their presentation, for their deliberation, and for all that they have presented here this afternoon. In our second bout, I want to make sure and get the school names totally right. So let me say that again. The Northgate College. In our second bout, we had Presentation College in Chaguanas, and we also had with us the Parvati Girls Hindu College. In this bout, the team taking the lead demonstrated that they started strong and they ended strong. They were able to intertwine and speak off the cuff, none other than Presentation College Chaguanas. Congratulations to you. You done a fantastic job this afternoon, really putting your argument together, structuring it, rebutting against the other team, and really with enthusiasm bringing home your points. Congratulations to you, Presentation College Chaguanas. And in our third round, we had UWI School of Business and Applied Studies. So we're looking at Roytec. And we also had UWI, but in this UWI, we had the University of the West Indies Department of Economics. The team taking the lead in this round really demonstrated what teamwork was about. There was no weak leg. From the beginning, the first speaker opened well. The second speaker came right behind. And in the summary, they summarized not only their points, but rebutted also what the other team had to say. In this third round, the team that has taken the champion, the cup here this afternoon is the UWI School of Business and Applied Studies. Congratulations to you, Roytec. Congratulations also to Presentation College Chaguanas, and congratulations to the Northgate College for their first place in this round. You're all winners. All teams, I want to say congratulations to you all. Your preparation and your presentation was there. I hope that you take the comments given and you work towards improving your skill and debating much more in the future. Thank you for all the information, statistics. You all gave me things to think about when it comes to the region as well. And I want to thank the COTE this year for putting on this presentation and this debate amidst COVID-19. We have proven that even in a pandemic, we can come together as a team and persevere. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to my other judges, Mr. Gregory Wallace and Mr. Kalu. I thank you very much. We were having some little debates in the background there as well. So thank you all for your time as judges, and thank you for this opportunity. I pass it on to our spokesperson again. Thank you.
Hi guys, and there you have it. I'm going to pass on to Ms. Brazan. Ms. Brazan, you as coordinator of the COTE Youth events, will you be able to close?
Yes, thank you everyone. And I think Candice has wrapped up the debate competition in the best way possible. For the winners proceeding into the final debate on November 12th, we will contact you between this evening and tomorrow to arrange for the drawing of the positions for the motion for that debate competition on November 12th. To our viewing audience, thank you for sticking out with us, and for all our participants and panelists, our debaters and their coaches, we want to thank you, and everyone stay safe and we'll be in touch. Thank you.